I think it's, I assume, going to change bodybuilding and change fitness and change weight loss.
How the people don't know about it yet? Crazy.
Steve changed our lives. I literally, I actually sat and I told my wife, Steve found something so incredible, and I don't even know how I never came across it. I look through diabetes stuff all the time.
Are we still talking about LSD?
No, we're talking.
Then we can officially get started?
Yeah, I'm just waiting on some papers to be delivered to me, but otherwise we're ready.
You need another reference. Yeah. Oh shit.
All right. How you doing, Derek?
Good.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, we just wanted to say welcome to BioBros 6, but since we're already starting, no problem.
Did your episode with Pete Rubish, was that a BioBros or what was it? Like, did you have what was the title for it?
No, it was a Live Long podcast, the overarching theme for my series.
Nice.
So I have
noticed, you've been clipping everything, like very, very, like pretty much everything's in clips now, eh?
I'm trying it because the reason it came out actually was honestly, I think we got new subscribers when you recommended Steve and I on your channel. And so a bunch of people were looking at the podcast and weren't invested in them, didn't know the characters. And I got a couple of comments saying, hey, make clips so that people can see them. So I tried to do that. And what I noticed was that actually then people were commenting much more. And I guess most people weren't watching through the whole podcast, so they weren't realizing there were some cool bits of them. But I think I'm going to change it and release the full podcast first so it doesn't annoy anybody, because it seems to be annoying some people.
Yeah, they want to see the full podcast and then maybe watch the clips later. But I think that's probably the best approach. Of course, for Derek's channel, it's probably better to release the clips first.
I think you almost have to just like go with what helps your channel the most in terms of algorithm. Like, it's annoying for people to want to wait, but I mean, if you put out the full thing, how many people are going to watch the clips instead? I don't really know. Like, it's, if you're going to cannibalize one thing, I would cannibalize the full podcast, to be honest, personally, rather than all these different clips that are going to be indexed separately that have way better opportunity to just blow up. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, we just discussed, that in some, like on Leo's channel, the podcasts do very, very well and the clips don't do so good. And then on my channel, it's basically the opposite.
No, I think cumulatively the clips outweigh the performance of the podcast, though, I would think, right?
Yeah.
He's talking about when we were posting the BioBros on one channel and one clip on the other channel, but it's sort of different. Yeah, I agree with you, Derek. The thing is, like, sometimes I engage with the subscribers, so sometimes they mention this, and I just want them to understand that, like, I understand it's a little bit more difficult for them, but they're gonna get the full podcast anyway. But if they watch each clip, they are tremendously helping the channel. So they're doing a huge part. Like, if they like the channel, they're tremendously helping me. So I try to tell them, I appreciate it,
Yeah.
So anyway,
we have like 100 topics today. I don't know how we're possibly going to get through this.
Yeah, my goal was the last time it was a little bit light on topics. So I thought we could have a bunch of topics to talk about lightly and traverse through them. So first of all, I wanted to say that, hey, who is Fillion? I don't know who he is, but I get recommended him a lot because I watch a lot of your videos, Derek, and I think you two are similar channels. The reason I bring him up is that today I was watching his podcast just as I was preparing for ours. He has a podcast with another gentleman who's a gamer, and I was jealous because I was noticing they do it in person, and it's so much different if you do it in person. People think we're all like autistic, awkward people that we keep interrupting each other or don't know how to, but it's so much different if you're in person.
Yeah, he's I don't really know what like to call him specifically, but he's sort of a commentary / comedy fitness industry guy. I don't know, like he does a lot of he would do natty or not videos too, but he's highly entertaining. I would say his demographic probably skews a lot younger than ours, and it's a lot, I don't know, it's a lot less information dense. Not that all of my stuff is information dense, but it's less of a hybrid of information and entertainment and like hyper aggressive, like as funny as possible entertainment kind of thing.
It's more like a traditional review or response video, like in the sense of what was started by H3. Supposedly, I'm studying the history of YouTube. I don't know what I'm doing, but I don't know if this is true or not. If that was just a random video I watched.
Yeah, it's more like traditional like YouTuber response, even though it's not like that's a bad thing necessarily. It's just a bit different than in the fitness industry. Typically, you find people refuting each other's claims and showing, oh, this scientific literature is not supported by blank. Whereas Philion is more like I don't know, like very YouTuber response. Just make you look like an idiot and be entertaining as hell while doing it, kind of thing.
Yeah, it can be a little bit cynical sometimes, but some of these reaction channels are kind of formulated that way, where it's a little bit cynical, a little bit just making fun of people, but it also in an entertaining way.
True.
Yeah.
So as a fellow YouTuber, I'm always wondering, when is it my turn to make an appearance on one of these reaction channels, which I figured my previous transformation would have, but so far so good.
I wonder how you would respond, Steve, because you're such a nice guy. I wonder if someone was very critical of you, your response.
I'd fly over and say, hey, no, that's the old school.
No,
way,
you'd
right?
be so
that's
polite in your response.
Like,
they'll start to like you. They'll take it back after your response. They'll
Probably,
like it.
I don't know. I mean, like most of my content, I'm really trying to make a difference, from a bodybuilder perspective, because all these bodybuilders, they either put it behind the paywall and and I will sign up for my website, right? And I just try to be open about it. And it's not healthy at all. Let's be honest. Bodybuilding is not healthy in any way, shape, or form, and it's almost an addiction. So by opening up on it, and for the younger audience to make a decision going forward, not this glorified image that we have about bodybuilding, like, oh, they're all healthy and the cranium enlargement doesn't occur. There's some side effects to be expected, and there's ways around that or mitigate them with proper information. And then all three of us are trying to preventively share information. So far, I think I'm excused from a reaction video that is going to be mean and nasty and derogatory. Because
once you get to 100,000 subscribers, then you can expect more of it.
I'm sure. It
really just has to do with how much of the market share you have, and then how much they have to gain by going after you. Because even if they totally agree with you, they'll still react to your stuff and be like, and basically just say, they'll watch your thing. This is like what I do sometimes. It'd be like, you'll say your thing, they'll be like, yep, I also agree with that. And then you'll keep going. They're like, yep, that's a good point. Steve's a good guy, blah, blah, blah.
No, I really enjoy your reaction videos, Derek. I've been watching them lately. They're really entertaining, actually. Both me and my wife watch them together. They're quite entertaining. But I could never do that because I honestly have no humor. Like, I'm not actually, sometimes I find things funny, but I can't do it intentionally. And sometimes I'm funny, but
you're extremely unintentionally funny often, which I don't think you realize often.
The kind of like not self-aware kind of thing.
One time there was this video I watched of you. You're like, welcome to the channel. Here's another video of me awkwardly talking to the camera. And I just laughed. I just laughed so hard. But like you said it so seriously, like you weren't even trying to be funny at all.
Because I was so miserable, awkwardly talking to the camera. I used to have my wife sit with me because I didn't know how to talk to the camera. So I would like talk to her the whole time. And it would take so much of her time. Like she had a job, she has work to do, she manages employees. But she was sitting next to me.
That's how I started also. When I started on YouTube and I felt a little bit awkward talking to the camera, I just had my wife off camera, just sitting there. Directing the questions, and then now I'm, a little bit more natural on camera, but still sometimes it takes me an hour to get through a 20-minute clip.
No, but Derek is charismatic. It's like Bill. I don't want to use Bill. That's a weird example, but someone really. He's charismatic on camera, but so is Philion, for example. Some people are like good on camera. Hopefully, over time, I develop a relationship with the camera like you guys have.
I think so, because 2 years ago, the old clips from Derek from 2 years, 3 years ago, it's there's a slow progression in personality. It develops over time, I think.
I think you get to know the audience or the camera, right? That's what it feels like, Derek? Is that what it's like?
Yeah. So it's like, it's not like I got better on camera. I think I just got better at, I did, but I mean, I got more congruent with my real personality on camera rather than before. It was like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm just looking at this thing. And especially if you use a camera where you can't see yourself, which a lot of people do record with, it's even more awkward. For whatever reason, like I need to actually like see myself in the display So I have this camera that you flip up. You can actually see the screen recording. Some people just stare into a lens and talk. Like, to me, that's really awkward.
I wish I had like a bigger screen though, so you could see it. It's hard.
No, it's okay. I have a small screen on the top, so sometimes I look, but I never look at the screen. But it's good to see myself moving and know that the audio is still recording, because I had a couple times where the audio just drops off, and then you watch
when
this.
You record a full video and then you realize your thing wasn't going or whatever. Worst feeling ever.
So time to smash some equipment, Tremboloni sandwich is still lingering somewhere, even though I'm completely off everything. It happens to the best of us, right? So it's at least it gives you a little bit of confidence. But there's also some YouTubers out there that watch themselves talk. So they're off to the screen to the side, looking at themselves in the camera.
Oh yeah. I've seen
very,
that.
very noticeable.
Yeah. So I also wanted to congratulate you, Derek, on your amazing performance with Chef Rush, which was analytically proficient and rigorous, and so it made us so proud as the BioBros that support you. But when I first listened to his account, actually, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but I happened to see his video that day by accident. It was recommended to me before I saw your video by 20 minutes. So I watched his video, didn't think much of it because I didn't see any responses. I was just like, what, 2,000? That's a lot of push-ups to do in the morning. And then I was thinking, my reaction, honestly, was this guy seems like a Steven Seagal type character mentally. You know how Steven Seagal is like, he's like, no, I know Aikido, trust me. Like that kind of character. So that's all I got out of it. But when I listened to yours, I was like, wow, he's teaching learning lessons. He pointed out a bunch of stuff and I didn't even know he was saying it's natural. The 2 hours sleep, I heard it, but I didn't pick up on it. I was like, wait a minute, that's a lie. That's a clear lie. So it was really fantastic.
I was shocked how much that blew up. It seems like every month there's like one thing that becomes a giant like meme in the industry. And it's like, I guess I'm lucky that I'm on top of the shit. So I'm like typically the first person to talk about it. And then it kind of snowballs into this thing. Like my video talking about Greg and Chef Rush got as many views as my first video where I actually talked about all of the content. So it's crazy how, it's just like a content like goldmine and that kind of stuff.
Greg, well, you went off on that video, man. He was very pissed.
Yeah, I've never seen him that mad in my life.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I understand a little bit to be honest with you, I really like Greg a lot more after watching those videos. I don't know, something about him grew on me because the racist comment, it's really upsetting. I love how he stood up for himself. It's like, this is not racist. This is bullshit. Don't just throw that on me, it was great. So Steve, I wanted to ask you, you've been back at the gym. And so originally, about a week ago, for the audience to know, I went to the gym once and I felt very awkward. And I texted the guys saying I felt like I went on a date with an ex-girlfriend. Actually, I felt like I went to have coffee with a long-term ex that had a really deep relationship with me, but it was very awkward. We had to have coffee. So it was very awkward. I went back 2 more times. Then Steve went back as well. So Steve, how's it been going for you?
I'm sore AF. I'm so sore just sitting here. That's why I'm not moving at all. So I did a back, hamstrings day off, and then push day and quads and calves, right? And everything hurts, dude. It's disgusting, but it feels good to go back to the gym. So a little backstory: non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, had to get that resolved, and then I brute forced it with a fasting mimicking diet for 6 weeks without training and protein and carbohydrates and fats. So got that stuff under control. And then I had to go back to the gym and pick up basically where I left off, right? Even though I dropped 30 kilos in the process. That's 66 pounds for the guys in a different measuring system. So went back to the gym and I gained 7 kilos since that time. Just by reintroducing the protein, the carbs, a little bit of carbs and the fats. So 85 kilos to this morning, 92.
Nice.
It's a kilo per day. Luckily, I'm not snoring. That would be like the first sign of trouble. But I think it's because I keep my daily fasted cardio in. And of course, I've been way heavier than 92 kilos in the past. But just going from like this super depleted state where I was only eating vegetables and not training and only doing cardio and being in a super caloric restrictive state and on liraglutide, which is now out of the PED stack because I do want to eat. And then I just added in 3 meals per day and maybe 150 grams of protein, 70 grams of fat, slowly bringing it back up, gained 7 kilos. It's crazy.
Wow.
And I didn't lose that much strength, which is even scarier.
But how you brought it up to me and Derek was that you were saying you were having difficulty concentrating after your workouts because you'd been used to not working out, and I think you got used to the clarity of thinking that comes with that.
I was so productive, those last 6 weeks where I was only eating vegetables, and I was just making like 16 hours, 18 hours a day because I didn't need so much sleep either. Like I was sleeping 6 hours a night, and the rest of the time was basically working on my brand and business. And now I go back to the gym and I lose 2 hours to that. I don't train for 2 hours, but there's a buildup. There's a pre-workout ritual in place. And then you have to go to the gym. Yeah. You get through the gym, then you go back home. And I'm sitting there sweating profusely because it's very hot in Thailand. And then you have another meal. And then, so I basically lose 4 hours of productivity just by going to the gym, with this pre-workout, workouts, post-workout where I don't do anything either. And then it's, the evening, you got an hour left just to unwind and kind of relax. So I'm losing 4 hours of productivity. And because I'm more sore and a little bit, I don't know, I would say foggy just from training. And I didn't even start training to failure yet. But I remember when I was cranking my ass off training to failure and way beyond it, what you would expect from a bodybuilder, I would be just like nodding off during the day.
Sense, though. No, but this makes sense. Well, the nodding off may be because of different reasons. Maybe because of after your workout, there's a release of endorphins, the natural opioids, as well as GABA. But the brain fog, actually, not to come to think of it, I never thought of this before. When you work out, you cause a lot of inflammation in your body, oxidative stress. The inflammatory cytokines from your immune system go straight to your brain, right? And that we know causes brain fog. So I never thought of that, actually, because I was going to ask you guys, look, I had a theory for a long time, and nobody has ever agreed with me about this, to be honest with you. But I started lifting in high school. So when I was in high school, I used to lift weights. Then when I went to college, I was trying to be a nerd. And I stopped lifting weights intentionally to allow myself to focus as well as I could on school. But I thought at the time, I just thought I never thought well when I was bigger or eating a lot. But I didn't put my finger on it at the time. Now later, what I want to ask you guys is this. Do you think that more muscular people are less cerebral? And why do you think that is, if it is the case? So, for example, it could be because their interests are different. It could be because they have less blood flow to their brain. It could be because of this inflammation all the time that's going to the brain, causing brain fog. It could be because they eat all day. We know that ketogenic diets promote clarity of thinking. Fasting does also. So they're eating all day. They have insulin all day. I don't know. But what do you guys think about this? Have you noticed this?
I notice on days where I work out, I'm like, my day is barely skating by, getting done what I need to get done. And anything thereafter is like 50% of what I could do otherwise. And it's really annoying. It's like, there's like fasting, mental clarity. And then there's like eating a big giant meal with carb brain fog. And then there's like your peri-workout brain fog after hitting a heavy lift and having your post-workout nutrition, just being like fucked at home, just like sitting there pretty much like not incapacitated, but you're not actually like capable of getting high quality anything done. And it's like my day, like I might as well go to bed at this point because I need to like recharge and wake up again so I can actually do high quality work. So I don't know, like I don't think it's a coincidence that the bigger bodybuilders don't seem to have as much output of work. Like you never see them pushing hard on social media. They put like the bare minimum in, not all of them, of course, but I mean, a lot of the really big, like super heavyweight dudes, you see them doing like the bare minimum in terms of their like athlete contracts and stuff. They post on social media, they're posing updates and stuff, but none of them are putting out consistent YouTube videos. None of them are putting out like information stuff. It's always just like physique update. Somebody films them at the gym and edits for them, and that's kind of it. But most of them, like, it seems like they don't pursue business as aggressively until they're done, and they don't have to focus on, like, obviously eating is time consuming, going to the gym time consuming, but I think a lot of the I think it just drains you mentally too. You have to allocate all of your energy demands go into nutrient partitioning and building muscle and recovery and just smashing yourself every day. So like I'm not surprised personally.
It's also interesting. Full-time job, basically, this bodybuilding stuff, and you're making yourself physically tired. Obviously, that's the whole point behind hypertrophy and gaining muscle mass. And in that process, you're making yourself mentally tired. And even when you move everything to the later part of the day, that's what I'm doing. I'm training in the evening, so I get all my work done first, right? And then I go to the gym. And then I might have a larger carbohydrate meal afterwards just to kind of help me recover and put me to sleep, right? Even though I'm in a ketogenic diet, I can still eat carbohydrates and stay in ketosis the majority of the day. I have a substantial amount of muscle mass, so we'll capture it and put me right back into ketosis. It's not a big issue. But when I was training in the morning, half my day would be gone to training because post-workout I would need to physically sit down and just you do some client work if you're coach. That's why most of the bodybuilders do coaching, because besides making the initial program, maintaining clients is reasonably straightforward. It's the initial program that takes a couple of days to really set up, but then once you figure out how the client works, it's just maintenance. So that's why a lot of bodybuilders do coaching, and not many have their own website or produce their own products. Again, like what Derek said, once they retire. So you'll see the Jordan Peters from now on will start producing a lot more content because he's putting this whole bodybuilding on the back burner. And
I loved your video, Derek, about Jordan. It was really so educational, so excellent.
Oh, he messaged me and said it was a good video and he appreciated it and all that. So it was good to see.
So now that I'm picking it back up, I really have to hold myself back because I don't want to train to failure and then the next day I have brain fog, because I have 2 leg days a week, right? I have a hamstring leg day and a quad day. And then the quad day has to be on Friday because then Saturday I can afford to be a little bit more tired. Because if I do, ideally you want to train chest on Monday and then quads on Tuesday, right? Everybody does it. It works very, very well when you structure that along with your cheat meal. You got plenty of energy. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm messed up. And half as productive as where I need to be. So now now besides the pharmacology that I don't want to push to the next level, now I don't even want to take the training to the next level anymore, because it affects my productivity. And that's even a harder realization when you spend 20 years trying to gain as much mass as possible, and while keeping your health reasonably intact. Of course, I could have pushed the drugs way harder and then be in a position that some guys are in now, really scared for their health.
The thing is, it's not coincidence that when we draw a human being, we draw a stick figure, and there's a circle, and then there's just sticks. And that when you compare animals, the difference between the head size and the body size, as the animal gets more intelligent, the head gets bigger compared to the body. And then what we do is we then grow our bodies so our head doesn't work anymore. and then we try, what's going on here? Well, your body's 300 pounds. So not us, but people are 300 pounds. So your brain is, you can see some of the brain is moving slowly because it's the resources of energy. And there's insulin resistance probably in the brain. So it's like we're literally not getting the energy to move sometimes.
I think we're just pulling energy from productivity away, to put it simply. And even if you train moderately, Derek, how hard do you push your workouts now? Because you train earlier and then you do your work afterwards. Right? What was your schedule?
Well, now I have to compress them into an hour window, so I have to go pretty hard, unfortunately. So it's when I was doing my bulking period during the winter, I was trying to fit 24 to 25 working sets in an hour block, which was impossible. So I'd be doing especially when you're trying to gain progress on your lifts, try going on a heavy compound movement with 1 minute rest, go, 1 minute rest, go.
Wait, just to explain for the audience, Derek he has to reserve a gym for an hour.
Yeah.
So he has to reserve it ahead of time and then he has to rush through his workout. So just to explain that.
Yeah. So, and you have to wear a mask while you're doing it. So try getting enough oxygen in while you're in the middle of a bent over barbell row with 200 and something pounds on it. And then taking 60-second rest in between. It's fucking hard.
Can you do this? Can you just pull it down?
That's what you asked to do. Yeah.
But people look at me sometimes.
You feel like a little kid though. You're I hope people.
Which is ridiculous because you're breathing so hard, everyone can get what it's but I know there needs to be some kind of social order, so I understand, but I'm going in a corner like a kid, like you said, hiding it and trying to
it's so weird, right? Everybody here in Thailand wears a mask religiously, on all the public spaces, but in a gym it's not required, so we can train as hard as we want. Besides the handicap that is the climate, the 80%, 90% humidity and the 37 degrees weather.
So by the way, this is interesting, right? In Asia, it seems like people are more willing to wear masks. I feel like I don't know why.
More
also in Dubai, it's part of Asia. In Dubai, people are very willing to wear masks. I don't know why. But in the West, people are like very hesitant to it. They're like, we're not used to this thing.
They're used to it with the N1H1 virus and some of the bird flu viruses. So they had a little bit pre-exposure to these kind of scenarios, and generally they're a little bit more obedient, a little bit more nationalistic, and the Westerners were just stubborn, man. It's just like no, I'm not going to wear a mask.
With the Arabs, we actually used to wearing turbans, so we used to cover our faces. So we go to the desert, we cover our face when it gets windy, so we're used to it all the time. And then the women are also cover their face sometimes. So I don't think it was too surprising to anyone. They're like, okay, there's a reason now at least.
Yeah, sure.
Anyway, so Derek, I wanted to ask. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say before we get off topic on the whole, so that NAFLD thing, Steve, how much from peak? I think there's going to be a clip in its own probably as far as your progress, because you just did the video recently about your reverse transformation essentially, which I'm sure you have more elaborate detail on that one. So check it out, guys, if you haven't seen it. But your peak body composition metrics, what were you in terms of weight, roughly body fat percentage?
I'll share the screen.
If you can screen share and we can do it, that'd be great. Yeah.
Here we go.
Hey, sorry, audience. We're learning this is the first attempt actually for either of me and Steve's channels to. There we go.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. So this is what I looked like 1.5 weeks ago on Sunday of end of March. So this was 85.5 kgs, front double bicep, back double bicep, and this is the vacuum pose and side chest.
Okay. Wait, Steve, I have to make a bodybuilding critique. I want to ask you, why are your legs posed like a Latino gangster from California?
That's
in California, when a Latino gangster poses, they always do this kind of side foot thing. But what does this have to do with showing? Is it something about showing the legs?
I did a post psychotherapy, and my nuts are gigantic, Leo. You know this. Come on. Look at. I know it's a black pants, but you should. There's clearly a lot of volume there. So. But the real answer is, you were trying to show a quad separation, so you have to stand out a little bit. Maybe you should pull up a picture from.
I don't. I just don't understand. I was genuinely curious. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So
I see that quad separation.
Here you can see the difference, right? So here, this was me at 115 kilos on the left, and then on the right, I'm 85 kilos. So that's 30 kilos less. So there, my feet are in the same position, but obviously I have a lot more adductors and a lot more hamstrings and less nuts.
Yeah. So the one on the left, was this right before starting your protocol, or coming off your protocol?
I think the weekend of being diagnosed, or a couple days before being diagnosed with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
So that was when again?
October 2020.
Wow, that's not that long ago. That's crazy.
Let's say 7 months ago. Yeah. So I went down 30 kilos in 6 or 7 months. And then you see here the back double bicep that's even more alarmingly different. The only thing that stayed were my calves. I'm not posing them correctly in these pictures, but the only thing that really stayed were my calves. Even my traps completely disappeared.
So how long did you actually stop training for, though? Because for a while you were trying to hold on, right?
Yeah. So I did, I let my hormone levels decline. I did my post-psychotherapy. And then my post-psychotherapy was successful. I was still training, albeit it wasn't very enjoyable. And then, when I realized my non-alcoholic fatty liver disease was only 50% resolved by going off cycle and doing all the supplementation, and caloric restriction for certain periods. During post-psychotherapy, I didn't do caloric restriction, but I ate a little bit above maintenance. So that postpones the amount of recovery you can have when it comes to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, because you need to be in a caloric deficit. But, as my hormones levels were declining, I was in a caloric deficit. So let's say I was in a caloric deficit for half the time and still training, and being androgen deficient. And then my hormones level came up and my food came up. So that made it have, probably postponed the resolvement a little bit. And then I decided to brute force it with this fasting mimicking diet. And I think before the fasting mimicking diet was 93 kilos. I can't really remember, maybe 94. So I dropped 10 kilos in 6 weeks. But I came down with 20 kilos already just by going off cycle.
So the context for a lot of the people watching too is not this is necessarily indicative of just coming off and PCTing and 6 to 7 months later. Rather, it is also doing this fasting mimicking plus not training for a decent portion.
Absolutely, yeah. So not training for 6 weeks and not basically eating anything of substance besides fiber, and something to fill my stomach. So this is an even crazier transformation. This is 1 year in between. For me, sauce to the gills, March 2020, when I did most of the pictures, and where I was
more comparable too, because the hair is actually there.
Yeah, but the jawline is it changed tremendously. You see that?
Yeah, crazy.
You know what I noticed, Steve? If you do the side picture that you were on, the side one where you can see not this one,
side chest.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, sorry, side chest. Do you notice how your liver is actually smaller in the right one? You can see it's not a fat issue.
No,
your liver, your abdomen is.
That's food. That's all food and intestinal mass. Yeah, you can see from the abs and thighs, right? Just see that my obliques are protruding.
Yeah, but you wouldn't see. So the obliques are protruding on the. Oh, maybe it is just muscle. I guess.
Just mass. It's just mass.
Could also be fat on the liver.
Probably, yeah. Maybe it's because I can pull my vacuum a lot deeper now. So and keep in mind that 115 kilos, I was using. Anabolics, insulin, growth hormone, all reasonable dosages, and of course eating 5,500 calories every day. So
but look at but the definition in your body is, I mean, it's more on the right, but you were quite lean on the left also.
I was reasonably lean, but the Lantus long-acting insulin and the growth hormone is of course blurring all the definition. And I was training insane, and even training insane put some water on you. That's what I noticed now already. So let's see if I have some other. This is natural pictures. You can watch that video.
I want to see.
You want to see it? So this was me at 88 kilos.
No way!
When I was
incredible. I have a natural one also. Well, that's incredible. You look so young. You look as young now. Honestly, the picture, the face is the same.
Weird thing. I think I de-aged 10 years, and that's what everybody's saying in the comment section as well. When I posted this video, I thought I still think I look horrible in these after pictures, but a lot of people were actually quite complimentary in the comment section.
Yeah.
I think if I formulated it differently, if I said, "Oh, it looks so bad," this is still pretty good for 20 years of bodybuilding and still look better than general population, the comments would be completely polar opposite. So this is, I think, right before I started my first cycle. My back is still pretty decent. Yeah.
Crazy. You shaved your head even back then.
Yeah, I've always done that. I hate hair, man. It's annoying.
This fucking guy.
Let me send you some plugs there. Take it off.
So what is the plan now? Like, are you going to ease into TRT, or what is the plan?
I'm 92 kilos now, right? And I didn't lose that much strength. My peak strength was, let's say, 11 plates on the leg press, and now I'm pressing 7. So I dropped about 75% of my strength, before I did this fasting mimicking diet, and now I'm around 60% of my all-time strength. Basically deload strength, considering I didn't train for 6 weeks. And I went to the gym going easy, but I was surprisingly strong, all things considering. So I think I'm just going to stay there and not do this crazy reps past failure, where you're really grinding and grinding and grinding. I'm not going to do that anymore, where my head turns red and people think it's high blood pressure, but it's actually the telmersartan and the tadalafil protecting me from my kidneys from elevated blood pressure. It's just all the capillaries that are, expanding. You can get them temporary tomato paste. So no more of that. No more pushing the food. So probably 3,000 calories. That's what it's going to be, besides a Sunday. And every Monday, I'm going to do fasting mimicking, which is today. Your Sunday, my Monday. So today is just going to be vegetables only. So 1 day a week, I'm not going to eat anything substantial, just to promote a little lipolysis, from the liver, potentially. And of course, on Sunday, I still eat freely, but it's not that crazy, considering I'm not that depleted and considering I won't have that much muscle mass anymore, which is a very hard realization, because those pictures that I took a year ago where I looked great, I'll probably never be duplicated. And that's a very hard pill to swallow. That's very hard, because I know I'll probably never beat that shape. And that's the whole point of bodybuilding. You know, always want to progress and improve and progress and improve. But maybe I've just applied progressive overload to my income, and then, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that works too.
Which you know, we've all been doing for the last year during COVID. I think a lot of people self-employed got, you know, substantially better financially, you know.
Yeah. So no anabolics in the future?
At least 8 weeks. Yeah, at least 8 weeks. I want to see what I can accomplish, how far I can get without anabolics. I'm still on growth hormone, you know, anti-aging. Yeah, I might. I still have a pan of Lantus laying around, which I might use like a little bit of insulin, you know, on leg day, just to facilitate a little bit of recovery and work through that pen. Once that Lantus pen, it's long-acting insulin for the guys that don't know. Once that pen is gone, I won't purchase any more because I don't need it. Yeah, that's just like, I don't want to waste drugs, you know?
No,
So if I have it laying around, I'm going to use it just at a low dose, 5 units, you know, 6 units, and then just, you know, phase that out. And probably 100 kilos is going to be my handicap, 225 pounds.
Wait, brother, this doesn't make sense. You can give away a Lantus pen. You don't have to use it.
No, it's already opened. I'm not going to give it away.
Why? Oh, okay, that's different. I threw a Lantus pen away the other day. I just found one from like 2 years ago, and I was like, "This is crap." I poison. I threw this.
I just use it on leg day, you know, facilitate a little bit of recovery. But once I'm 100 kilos, that's going to be it. No more 115. Yeah. Maybe
like even my
kilos.
old like even the old like trend, it's like I know I'm never gonna fucking use it, but sometimes I'm like,
no, the trend's still there. No, the trend's still there. It's just, the insulin's different. That's just ridiculous. There's no point of using that for me.
There's
you know?
a lot of for me it is, you know.
The trend is there in case I go to war. Like in my mind, what if there's a war? I have my trend. If something goes down, I'll be vigilant, you know.
If Dave Palumbo makes another commentary video, you know, then it's the Tremboloni sandwich gets pulled out.
No, but these things are like safety things. You need some of these. But the insulin, I don't know why I would keep it. The insulin is just for the audience that doesn't know. So Steve and I and Derek talk about this kind of health stuff all the time. So we all know that insulin is primary driver of cancers. Is, you know, it's the most like oncogenic pro-cancer hormone in the whole body, and it's like one of the major problems with bodybuilding in the first place. And Steve is on a ketogenic diet trying to avoid insulin a lot of the time, but then he uses a bit of insulin for performance advantages.
It works so well together, man.
But I feel like androgens are safer than these kind of insulin and growth. Personally, that's how I feel.
No. When it comes to the blood work and stuff, okay, maybe long-term, you know, cancer and proliferation and that kind of stuff. But I think I prefer to keep the anabolics as low as possible to, you know, not have your blood pressure go up so much and you know, your lipids change and your you know, your liver stress and all that kind of stuff. I prefer to use the peptides, really. But you can't use, you know, that much growth hormone when your anabolics are low. So for me, going forward, it will be like this: 125 tests per week, 100 primo, so I don't need an AI and I get a little bit of a cosmetic benefit. So it's not hormone replacement. It's a cycle because primobolan is not bioidentical. So it's 125 tests, 100 primo, 225 milligrams of anabolics in total. I should be able to maintain 225 pounds on that, you know, with decent training intensity and recovery. 2 units of growth and maybe 5-6 units of Lantus on leg day to facilitate recovery. That's it.
Oh, okay. It's a low dose.
Yeah. I'm 35 units. I'm not going to do anymore. No way. That's the old me on 115 kilos. You know, 700 carbs, 35 units of Lantus. Let's go.
Leo, so if we went through your pictures, would you be able to pick out like what was happening during that time frame on the screen?
Yeah, sure. Although I have to just caveat that you know, my pictures aren't as cool, obviously, and they're you know, because so I'm not a bodybuilder and I never trained for hypertrophy, and also, to be honest, because of that reason, we take less pictures. So maybe we could go, maybe Steve, if we go back to the main picture, I can start somewhere. So let me just look for a second. So let's start on the bottom. Well, let's look for a fat one. Where's the fat one? There's
one called.
We can start on the bottom right. I just want to show you guys how much my physique has changed. So start at the bottom right.
Yeah.
So Yeah. So that's when I was 24. I had used steroids when I was 21, 22 for like maybe a total of 4 to 6 months. But basically, I became obese. I was alcoholic when I was 23, 24. And when I finally recovered, I started lifting again. And this is when I first lost the fat. So you can see I have less tattoos here. So we could close this one. And then if you go to the next one to the left of it, you can see
I bet a lot of people would say you look younger now than you did in the picture we just had on the screen.
Yeah, it's because of a lot of alcohol, a lot of dangerous lifestyle. But so this one is me still natural, well, so-called natural this time, 24, 25. I was squatting over 400 pounds here, and this was within a few months. And then I stopped lifting for a while because of some things happened in my life. We could close this one again. I stopped lifting for a while, and you could go to the top middle where I have this red pants, top middle center.
This
top,
one?
No, above it on the right. Top.
Also been obese many times.
Oh, here, yeah, okay.
That one, exactly, yeah. Sorry,
this
I could read
is,
it. You can see how fat I have actually gotten. I mean, this is real fatty liver disease. When I talk about fatty liver disease, I really mean I had fatty liver disease. And I could easily get into fatty liver disease because I used to be an alcoholic. So I have a propensity. Once you gain those cells, they regain so quickly. So you can see a lot of that is visceral also. So this is a full out huge belly. Anyway, you could close that one. Just to, I mean, this is very embarrassing. I just want to show you guys the changes, you know.
Yeah, and then if you see how dynamic the body can be, you know.
Exactly, and then you could see how under that one, you could see the face, how obese even just the face was. So, you know, this is just me sitting there with that kind of prison mustache. You can close this one. And then I just want to show you guys. So, okay, now we could go to, so I started lifting again. You can go just to the left of the one we, no, that's later. So to the left of the one we just opened, one more.
This one?
Me on the Annabelle only cycle with Alan Fisher.
Ah, okay.
So this was when I started lifting again. This is Alan Fisher, probably the greatest lightweight arm wrestler in history. And this is when I started lifting. You can see I'm bloated and on the Annabelle. You could close this one. Same day, actually, under this one, there's a video. Right under that one, you see me with some chick I was with at the. So you can see I was a bit muscular. It's just a quick thing. So you could close this one. So that's how it became. And I wasn't very muscular. And then that picture you opened at the beginning, top left. That's how I got sort of toward the peak. But I was bigger than this, but I didn't have pictures at the time. So you could go right. I think there's another one there. I don't know.
So it's so funny. Like before social media, none of us, we really were diligent with picture taking. Like I wish I had a time machine and go back and took way more pictures than I did. And the pictures that I have right now of that time, they're all horrible. Like taken with a calculator, you know, basically the horrible picture. Yeah, because you look good for a month or 2 months because social media pressure didn't exist because there was no social media. So you don't take so many pictures, right? And then once in a while you take a picture and then it looks good. And this is what, an iPhone 1?
That's true for my old pictures when I was in my 22. I was actually bigger then too than I ever got later, but I didn't have any of those pictures. But close this one, I'll show you another one, a final one. There's what did I want to show you guys? That's me and Dmitry Trubin. So do you see the third row? Yeah, he used to be ranked #1 in the world for arm wrestling. That's Dmitry Trubin. He's a massive guy, good friend of mine. We traveled twice together. A very good friend of mine. I just want to show the audience in case there are any arm wrestling fans. And we could close this one. And then let's see if there's any. So now we show the weight loss. So what happened was maybe we go to the red hat one and the next to that. Yeah, the red hat. The red shirt. Yeah, that one.
This one? Okay.
Yeah, that's when I first stopped lifting weights. So you can see I was still on TRT and not lifting though. But still
I want to go party with this guy.
Yeah, it was quite fun though. Yeah, you can close that one, and then I'll show you the progression as we get smaller. So
that
then
guy looks like he has all of the bar connections.
Yeah, right.
There's a picture of me sitting down in a room, but I don't know where it is. Maybe it doesn't show for me. It's on the right hand. Oh, I have to move this. There's a picture of me sitting reading. Oh, I didn't send it to you guys. Okay, anyway, so you can show on the left there four more to the left. There's me sitting. Yeah, you wanted to put. That's me sort of toward the end. Yeah, that's me when I lost all the almost all of it.
You're slowly turning into Santi Aragon facially.
Yeah, I lost then all the muscle. Yeah. Actually, no, there was one more before that of me with my wife with a beard. You could see at that point I'd been off testosterone and not working out for 6 months. No, not that one. There's another one with me with my wife.
So lovely.
That's me. Now that's the full loss. Now that's 8 months down the line. Zero working out, or not 8 months. Sorry, a year and a half down the line, and that's zero working out, and everything's gone. And so you can see barely any muscle is there. Nothing is retained. But whenever I would go work out, the muscle would come back quicker than it used to be when I was younger.
Yeah. No, the muscle memory is very potent because my wife, she gives me a hug and then she's like, I can't hug you fully anymore, within a week of eating and training.
Yeah, it's very quick.
It comes back so fast. And I've gone through this process several times, like when you
here, above that one, there's one in the snow. You see that one? Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, that one. You could see that arm there is after 6 months. And now there's zero TRT, zero test in my system for 3 months, and zero workout for 6 months for sure.
Were you running DNP at that time?
Huh?
Were you running DNP at the time that you can, take your shirt off in the snow and not be phased by it?
No, I used to be hot like that all the time, just from the years of androgens. But that's what I was trying to show you guys. Like the muscle stays for a while, so it's true. Like if you stayed on TRT, you could retain a lot. Like Steve lost a lot just now because he went totally off and starved himself and didn't work out. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's all I want to show you guys.
Well, that's
actually what I used to do when I was. This is something I just pulled together in 2 seconds, so I did not prepare for this. This was this was just like off YouTube thumbnail, and this was like that was my first shitty little bulk.
I like that you bulked so hard in the past.
No, I have some devastating like bloated face pics for sure.
Yeah, and people use that as an avatar on the meme.
Wait,
I let one guy on my channel keep the meme going because he's like original and came up with it. But then there's like this train of like bandwagoners who try to copy him and do the same kind of joke and use like different variations of the same picture. And I'm just like, you guys are not original. And I just like, have to give him the ban hammer on the YouTube channel. But there's one dude who has like my peak bloat face as his like avatar that's in like every single comment section.
Oh, you're talking about the guy who says less plates, more work or something like that?
No, more dishes, more bitches.
Oh no, there's another one he has a funnier one, which is like less plates, more work on my plate. Something like, I don't know what it is. Less dates, more work on my plate. That's what it is.
It's crazy.
How funny and obvious was it when Dave was like, no plates, no dates on his thing?
Bro, you sent me the link and I was like, it can't be like that. So I actually opened it.
Couldn't. How transparent was that? Like,
he was like, no, but by the way, apparently his audience knows about this. So when I mentioned that video about it, that comment about him, his audience commented, they're like, whenever he brings up a channel he doesn't know, he pretends, channel he knows, he pretends he doesn't know it. So apparently what he was doing was like, this channel, no dates, no plates. Like, why would it be that? Why would it be no dates, no plates?
He did the same with Nick Strength and Power, right?
Oh, yeah, he used to do that too. I think
mispronounce it on purpose.
Everyone. Yeah. He calls it. Yeah. Anyway, we don't want to get negative, but so let's continue. We got a lot of stuff to discuss. I want to skip around a little bit. I want to ask you, Steve. So let's discuss carrier oils briefly. And by the way, Derek, the reason why I was going to ask Steve about skincare is because you have a propensity to lose hair, Derek, and expertise with the hair loss. So I often ask you because I don't lose hair easily, so I can't easily tell sometimes. Steve is prone to acne, and he's also done some specialty in like skincare and stuff like that also. So I want to ask you, Steve, 2 questions. Like in general, what are the outcomes of your research into carrier oils? Because that's something you introduced to me, and I think, to be honest, the public discourse on the subject of PEDs, that we never really were thinking so much about carrier oils.
No.
So what did you notice about carrier oils as well as solvents? And then there are issues with systemic inflammation as well as acne.
My number one goal is to try and get this clip over 50,000 views, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to, but we shall
just
try.
put it in the title. This clip will get no views, and then reverse psychology, and then people will start watching it. So
I have done that before.
Carrier oils. It's often overlooked in the bodybuilding community, but it should definitely be in consideration when you make decisions where you purchase your products, because carrier oil can contribute to systemic inflammation. Now, way back when on the forum days, people would know that you could get some sort of improper response from ethyl oleate, right? And a lot of these underground labs, they use 10-15% of ethyl oleate with grapeseed oil, never mention it. And they would say, the carrier oil is grapeseed oil or cottonseed oil, right? Cottonseed oil is FDA approved, and grapeseed oil is tolerated in the compounding pharmacy scene. And even then, sometimes they use ethyl oleate, but they don't mention it. So you always have to keep that in mind. So there's a couple synthetic carrier oils that are actually industrial grade solvents that is very easy to suspend raw formulations in, whether that's testosterone enanthate, propionate, these pre-mixed cystinones, right? You buy that pre-mixed nowadays online, and you just throw it in there, throw it in a microwave, and it's ready. Now, the problem is with ethyl oleate, propylene guaiacol, one of Boston's favorites. Yeah. I even send...
Boston likes propylene glycol?
No, the guaiacol, the injectable anadrol.
That's the stuff in Trent, isn't it? The stuff that smells very potent.
It smells terrible.
Yeah, that smell, you've got your like Trenace and you open up your little drawer thing and you have your Trenace and it just like permeates through the room.
Yeah.
That's what that is. Okay.
Yeah, and it's such a strong solvent that it literally dissolves you from the inside out. And that's why the systemic inflammation goes up. So I noticed this over the last 10 years that I've been requesting blood work. First, I understood that ethyl oleate people get an allergic response, but nobody ever explained how you could see that on the blood work, etc. And then I heard somewhere John Meadows talk about systemic inflammation and doing a high sensitivity C-reactive protein test. I think I heard about that 8 or 9 years ago from John Meadows. So, okay,
really?
Start doing some more research. Yeah. I mean, you have to get inspired somewhere, right? So
I didn't know. I didn't know anyone was talking about C-reactive protein.
Oh, John Meadows does. Yeah.
Wow,
but he does it on his private message website, right? So, and I believe he mentioned it somewhere where I read. Maybe it was in a Geared Up podcast. Also another radio show that got discontinued. Anyway, so started doing more research, started testing my blood work, and then I started to notice that on particular products, C-reactive protein would be severely elevated, and other products, pharmaceutical grade products, it would not be elevated. And then later I saw that on compounds in arachi's oil, mostly nandrolone or testosterone enanthate. Arachi's oil is refined peanut oil. That some people had systemic inflammation and other people did not. So there's an adverse reaction there as well. And the problem is with chronic systemic inflammation, elevated C-reactive protein levels, is that it damages the inside of your arteries. And you're always in this inflammatory state. And then
it damages everything, yeah.
Yeah, right. So over prolonged periods of time, considering that steroids also ruin your lipid levels and raise your LDL, which is more potential for foam cells, and change your acidity, changing your calcium levels in the blood, especially the ones that retain extra electrolytes. So now you have inflammation, high LDL and foam cell potential, and changed calcium levels in your blood. That's a recipe for cardiovascular disease. And even the arachi's oil, which is FDA approved, whether that's a nandrolone, the cystinones, or the testosterone enanthate, even if you stay pharmaceutical grade, you can still create an increased potential for cardiovascular disease. And nobody does one cycle. We do cycles for decades, right? Even if it's hormone replacement. So on hormone replacement, let's say you do cystinone 250, 1 milliliter per week, right? Generous hormone replacement for bodybuilders, 250 milligrams per week, 1 milliliter of arachi's oil. C-reactive protein will be at the top of the reference range. But ideally, you want to keep your high sensitivity C-reactive protein test below 1 milligram per liter.
Below 0.3, really.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But, with the training and dietary practices and environmental pollutants, it's hard to, as a bodybuilder, it's hard to keep it below 1 milligram. Like when I stopped training, stopped eating, I was at 0.2 milligrams per deciliter, and the rest is just environmental, whatever, A
lot seems genetic, though, I think, too, because it's like some guys who historically will have, shitty HDL no matter what they do. And then there's some guys whose C-reactive protein, like mine, is never above 0.3, even if I'm doing whatever, to be honest.
Even when you did the synthetic estrogens in ethyl oleate, did it go up?
Yeah.
No, because that's a measure of your host defense system's response activity. So it's a measure of two things. It's a measure of your actual damage in your body that your immune system is responding to, but it's also a measure of your immune system's response. So you simply may be someone who responds less, meaning that, for example, you may encounter...
That could be bad then.
Yeah, that could be bad. Absolutely. Absolutely. So you may have... We've never checked it out for you, Derek, but I already have I have a section for antioxidants, for detoxification in the body from the genetic polymorphisms. We can look through them, and you could see your glutathione polymorphisms and stuff like that. I know you probably looked through some of them, but basically the point is that if you and there's other than that, there's your immune system, IL-6, like for example, IL-6 polymorphisms are statistically significantly associated with longevity. So there's also polymorphisms in individual soldiers of the host defense system, of the immune system, that could affect how responsive they are and so on. So you just might be less responsive. Yeah. But yeah, there's genetic polymorphisms, just like with cardiovascular disease. But I wanted to add something, sorry to interrupt you, Steve, also. I want to add that, like, just to keep in mind for the audience listening, it's not just cardiovascular disease that's associated with steroid use combined with weightlifting, the weightlifting lifestyle. It's also autoimmune disease. Like you mentioned, John Meadows, who had colitis. Maybe he had a genetic part, but I got Crohn's disease. Many people have their issues with their intestines. Many people have arthritis. Many people have psoriasis. Many people have anxiety. These are all autoimmune conditions. Also, it seems something about the weightlifting lifestyle, maybe it's all the inflammation over time or whatever, causes that too. So you don't want extra inflammation from your carrier oils or your solvents, especially.
No, right. And so the problem is the selection of pharmaceuticals that you can actually use is very, very small. And that's why I always push pharmaceutical grade. I said, listen, get the best possible quality you can get besides whatever is in Arachis oil.
What is your favorite pharmaceutical testosterones?
Bayer testosterone enanthate, or Rotex Medica testosterone enanthate. Then people start bitching about the castor oil being so difficult to inject, or the ricin that could potentially be contained. But listen, it's a pharmaceutical company. They're not going to produce products which have trace amounts of ricin inside, or ricin, or however you pronounce it. It's
ricinoleic acid, though. Is that taken out of it? Because that would be what
that's
you'd want
that's
for
what
your
I
hair.
mean. Yeah, that's what I want. But you mean the acid that helps with your hair, right?
Yeah.
So that's something. The castor oil is being used as a hair anti-hair loss method, and what I speculated.
I got you. Sorry, guys. I got you.
It's like a, I don't know if you know how it's used in
prostaglandin
E2 agonist or something like that, but it's actually used to induce labor in women alongside of pharmaceutical PGE2. So if you use, like, I think the protocol is like 60 milliliters of castor oil. If you slam it, you like induce labor. Or if you want to shit yourself, you can also take a much lower dose, but it's still effective. And then at a lower dose than that, you can get some hair growth effects as well as beard growth, which is
I've seen the beard growth, but it's not as significant as Minoxidil. Yeah.
So what I do notice, is just anecdotal evidence, and we talked about this maybe 2 years ago, right, Derek? When you mentioned that video about castor oil, and then I told you I've been injecting castor oil for 5 years, 6 years. That's my carrier oil of choice, and I have great hair. And all my clients that run castor oil have great hair also.
Huh. I don't think it would be enough. I don't think it'd be enough that you're injecting, but it definitely is. It's like, anecdotal, it made me think at the time. I was like, shit, maybe I should get some of that.
Wait, while we're on this topic, briefly, not to, we'll go back to this, but briefly, Derek, is there a new like a topical anti-androgen that's superior to RU or something like exciting other than RU?
The first topical anti-androgen ever has been FDA approved. It's called Clascoterone, CB0301, or brand name Breezula. The only thing is it's being approved at a lower concentration for acne, which is the formulation that has been approved now, and their anti-androgen topical for hair loss prevention is still in their pipeline, but it should go through based on the not only clinical data they have already supporting it, but as well as the fact that their acne preparation made it through. So what a lot of the hair loss guys are going to do, supposedly, is get the acne version and just like mega dose it, even though I don't know how that's going to work. So a lot of people are still buying it on the gray market sort of thing. But in practical application, it's definitely safer because there's more data reinforcing it. And you actually have, studies that are publicly available you can dig through on humans that are recent, as opposed to like 20-year-old things on an abandoned chemical. But anecdotally, like, I've used it, I don't find it any more potent than RU. I don't think, in fact, I think it's weaker milligram for milligram. It definitely is, but it's less side effect ridden. But at the same time, it's steroidal in its chemical structure. So there is some potential negative feedback through the HPTA. like they found something about like adrenal steroid production or I forget what it was. Something was like down regulated to some extent. It was like extremely negligible though, like likely not a problem whatsoever. I'm not trying to say RU is better though. I would say in general, if you had, it's so expensive and cost prohibitive though right now that it's not, most people can't even run it at the dose you need, which is like 75 milligrams twice a day on your head would cost you like hundreds of dollars every few weeks or something like that. I forget what it is. Like a lot of people aren't going to throw down for that, but in general, from like a tolerability standpoint, it's probably the safest topical anti-androgen we have available right now, where you know what to expect. It's actually being tested for this purpose, but I don't necessarily think it's the most effective one milligram for milligram.
For an effective dose, will the side effects be worse than some of the other compounds? We always have to look at the effective dose, right? Like, let's say the effective, because it's less potent, you need a higher dose. And then besides the extra expenses, would, the overlapping side effects be worse?
Like what it has going for it is when it's metabolized, it breaks down into more like moot compounds that aren't necessarily like potent antagonists of the AR. So like when it gets systemic, at least if I'm remembering correctly. So hypothetically, it's supposed to give a more localized effect because once it enters like systemic circulation, it gets broken down into more like mild anti-androgen metabolites that are a lot less antagonistic in their effects. So you kind of get like more local activity relative. Like I know that's kind of a little bit of a bro science stretch on it, but in practical application, it seems pretty well tolerated with basically no sides. When people do get sides though, they represent the same thing you would expect from an anti-androgen. It's just less prevalent, but the compound itself is also less effective. So like at the end of the day, nobody's going to prevent hair loss with this stuff, in my opinion. Like I think if you have very, very mild hair loss, you might be able to stave it off with this stuff entirely. But for the majority of people, finasteride is still going to be the front line. And then your subsequent spike in scalp testosterone that you can't do anything about with just finasteride, you would like clean that up with an anti-androgen like CB0301, RE58841, something that can bind to the AR, because 5-alpha reductase inhibition, you're not actually doing anything about any other androgen in your body. It's just DHT being reduced up here. And there's like, you can see how much of a spike you get in scalp T when you take 5-alpha reductase inhibitors. And, milligram for milligram, not nearly as problematic as the base DHT molecule, obviously, but you're still, although it's like almost unnoticeable for a lot of people, you're, instead of going like this fast of hair loss, your hair loss is now going like this fast. So that's where you would come in with the CB or the RU or the, some people way back and they use things like flutamide. Like I heard you talking on your episode recently about anti-androgens. The ones you mentioned are all primitive, like old school ones, like bicalutamide and flutamide. No one uses those anymore, really.
No, there was a second class that I mentioned, which are these. They deal with the response elements. That was a newer generation.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Those are the old ones
you mentioned. The ones you mentioned with bicalutamide and flutamide. Those are like
there were two groups. Yeah.
Bicalutamide is like a drug used by like people who want to transition from male to female, but it's horrible for like, it's very primitive and shitty. And interestingly enough, SARMs were actually designed off the chemical backbone of bicalutamide.
No way.
Which is really weird. But anyways, and that's sort of why I had a lot of interest in the SARMs. Like a lot of people don't get, where the therapeutic promise of them comes into play. They think they're all overhyped. But when you actually look at the chemical structure of them, they're like more refined versions of old school anti-androgens. So like there's different applications more than just like bodybuilding shit, which is what people are actually looking at it for. So that's why I sort of have the interest in them. But anyways, flutamide is like the shittiest of the shitty anti-androgens that's been phased out like a long time ago. Not that RU is good either, but it's more tolerated than flutamide at least. And there's people who are using things like hydroxyflutamide. But as far as like next generation anti-androgens, I'm pretty sure the ones that are used for like actual prostate cancer and stuff, it's like darolutamide, enzalutamide. Those ones I think are like the newer generation ones.
So the reason why I ask is like a couple of folds. You mentioned this idea of you inhibit DHT, you get more, and then you got to topically deal with the increase or just the testosterone in general, even without the increase. You got to deal with that too. So you use the topical thing there. But also then there's some people, for example, that take finasteride and then have debilitating like penile dysfunction, for example, which comes directly because of the androgen paucity in the penis. So my idea here to repair this, which I've been doing with consultations, is to do a topical testosterone locally at the groin, and then to try to get them to do a topical androgen receptor blocker in the hair, and then to take their finasteride. And then if they need potentially more, then they take like FSH or RFSH. But then basically the issue is this: we're trying to raise the systemic level to the degree where they don't get the androgenic side effects. And we reduce, like, by using progesterone and other things to try, or psychological things to try to reduce how much androgen you need. But then at some point, you have got to use the topical thing also to try to limit it as much as possible.
It's like 7 different pharmacological inventions just to prevent hair loss and at the same time libido issues. Because I get a lot of consultations.
It's a seesaw. It's like, and like especially size, libido, and hair loss. Those three together, and brain. Yeah. Oh my God. And brain concentration, those three are like, this is the worst situation.
No, you have to make a conscious decision. That's why, I mentioned to listen, hair loss, it's from a cosmetic perspective, it's not very desirable. But, trying to get that under control with the nandrolone only cycle or megadosing finasteride or some of those creams, that they come with their own problems as well. And I have a lot of consultations now for guys that even use a marginal dose of finasteride to get their DHT under control. And they got terrible libido issues,
but you can
last for months. Of course, you can change it. Yeah, you can change it. There's much better approaches out there, but it's still, it's like the easy approach is not the best approach, being on finasteride, because you always need to do something extra. And unfortunately, not everybody gets these libido issues. So some guys have awesome libido on finasteride, and some guys, they get murdered.
Yeah, but sometimes I do believe that these side effects can be. I mean, I've done it. Like they
definitely can be reversed. 100%.
Yes. No, not just reverse. No, not just reverse.
Definitely deal with it and thrive while you're on it. It's just a matter of what you're willing to expose yourself to concurrently is the thing, though.
Exactly. And okay, but sorry, I distracted you guys. So back to the solvent and carrier oil situation. So now you mentioned some of the carrier oils. The idea that I have is this, right? So solvents, and maybe we have to clip these and move them together. But the solvents, the idea of a solvent for the audience to think about, it's something that's supposed to make something soluble in a solution. It's supposed to digest it for you. Yeah. So this thing digests things. If it still is able to, I don't know how chemistry works, but I'm imagining if it's still able to digest things after it's digested the whatever powders you have in the solution, which it must still be able to digest things, then it's going to do it to some degree in your body. So my idea is this, and right now one of my tasks on my computer to do is to study solvents, because I want to do it for minoxidil, because I'm trying to figure out what solvents to use for my own minoxidil, because I realize like propylene glycol is causing a lot of inflammation. Yeah. But then it becomes this, right? Is it about the power of the solvent? Like the more, like if I have a molecule, a certain kind of steroid, for example, that requires a very high solvent, like, or a high temperature, like trembolone, does that mean that therefore I'm always going to use a harsher solvent? So certain molecules of steroids, if you take them, there's always going to be a harsher solvent? Is that the way it is?
It wouldn't surprise me, because you saw that pharmaceutical trembolone was suspended in a Rutsch's oil with a decent concentration of benzyl benzoate. Now, I don't think that benzyl benzoate or benzyl alcohol is the issue, because that's been studied, and benzyl alcohol and benzyl benzoate actually acts as a prodrug. So when it's suspended in cottonseed, castor oil, or sesame oil, which are all FDA-approved carrier oils, the benzyl benzoate and the benzyl alcohol actually helps with absorption in the beginning, while the lipases work on the oil itself. Because as far as I know, lipases and esterases, they don't work on benzyl benzoate, benzyl alcohol, ethyl oleate, propylene glycol, and all these synthetic carrier oils. You have lipases that break down fat. They work on the carrier oils. And esterases, they work on the esters, cleave off the enanthate, the propionate, the acetate, right? One carbon atom at a time. That's why enanthate with way more carbon atoms takes a longer time, because it needs to be cleaved off one at a time. And then propionate has a couple carbon atoms and three sessions of cleaving, and it's bioavailable, right? Now you have now you have the active pharmaceutical ingredient being testosterone or whatever other compound. So the ideal of pharmaceuticals is this: you have a carrier oil that holds the majority of the pharmaceutical ingredient, not being active because it's testosterone enanthate, and the enanthate needs to be cleaved off by esterases. It's a depot. It's called an injection depot for a reason. You don't want MCT oil or propylene glycol to disperse, and now you have all this testosterone enanthate available being cleaved off by esterases, raising serum concentrations, getting tremendous amount of estrogen or dihydrotestosterone conversion for a short period of time, right? Because the oil disperses already. So now it's already being metabolized. So you want a carrier oil that sits in the depot for a couple of days. Castor oil stays in the depot for a couple of days. The half-life extends it to maybe 34 days even, depending on where the injection depot is. So you inject something, the lipases start to work on the carrier oil. If you don't have a carrier oil and it's all solvent, the lipases don't do anything. And in the meantime, these solvents start dissolving the tissue surrounding it, causing creatine phosphate kinase to increase, and the aminotransferases, which are also found in skeletal muscle. So when you see very high CPK and ALT and AST levels, you're not on orals, you're not training that hard, that's this synthetic carrier oil dissolving your muscle.
So you just said something very controversial, which I've never heard before, which is this idea that I guess it's what's that word, like the viscosity of the oil. You're saying the more viscous oils will keep the depot better. And what I think Steve means by depot is literally the encapsulation of the oil, of the oil holding there instead of dispersing through the muscle, right?
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
So yeah, exactly. So you have the injection depot, right? And then the carrier oil, the dynamic viscosity rating, because it's based on temperature. And of course, the dynamic viscosity rating goes down at a higher temperature if your body weight or body temperature is higher, but including the benzyl benzoate and the benzyl alcohol also lowers this dynamic viscosity rating because it is a solvent, but it also disperses faster. That's why you see, regardless of the ester that you inject, within the first 24 hours, serum concentrations go up and then they taper off. It doesn't matter which ester. You know, all these.
I mean,
and
so
that's the benzyl benzoate and the
true.
benzyl alcohol dispersing, acting as a prodrug, improving the delivery, and then whatever remained behind with testosterone annotate propionate or whatever ester, that is slowly being metabolized, maintaining serum concentrations. And the lipases work on that. But if you don't have an oil based as a carrier oil, there's nothing for the lipases to do. The propylene glycol just disperses, or you know.
But there's still MCT oil is still a fatty acid. It will still be digested by lipases.
Right.
So,
but the idea of what
is it disperses very fast. So that's a separate issue. So that one, I think, it totally makes sense, right? So if you inject in the fat, you have a more stable testosterone level than if you inject in the muscle, because the encapsulation of the depot is more secure and it's attacked slower. So
less
it's
blood
totally
flow and it stays in a circle, right? So there's less dispersal. So the volume where lipases and esterases can actively metabolize oil or esters away is less. And when it disperses more, the surface area gets bigger. So that's why MCT, it gets a very big surface area after the injection. So it disperses throughout all your muscles, and all these lipases and esterases can start working. And that's why with MCT oil, you need daily micro administrations. And with castor oil, you can do one injection a week, even though it takes forever to inject because it's so thick.
With that said, yeah, it's true. The MCT is convenient, and I agree with you. And I understand why people like it, mainly because of the convenience. But
injection convenience, and then you have to do daily micro injections because otherwise you don't have stable serum concentrations because it disperses so fast.
I mean, to some degree, I mean, with the enanthate, it's still going to be broken down slowly with the enanthate system. But I agree. I know what you're saying. For sure, there's going to be a spike. The
spike is a lot different. You can check. You do 1 cc on testosterone, enanthate, and castor oil. You check your total testosterone the next day, and then do the same dose on MCT. It will be way higher, maybe 25% higher on your total testosterone.
So there's a couple of notes here. One is the danger of making depots. So the idea is that almost all infections that come from people that develop very actively and have to get surgically removed are those ones that are deep injections that are a pocket of oil, because it doesn't get dispersed. It's not able to be attacked by the immune system well, and bacteria forms.
And then you get some sterile abscess. Yeah.
When you inject small injections and they're with lesser oils, they disperse easily. You can get infected. You'll see an inflammation. It'll be hot, but it won't be localized. It won't be that kind of. So you might get a systemic one. So that's one thing. The second thing is that, as I was thinking, I wish there was a guy who would put cool fatty acids into the steroids. Like, there are fatty acids that are actually performance enhancing, like stearic acid, which is a saturated fat.
Go to
is
Reddit.
a very Is it very healthy, huh?
You'll see guys based on, what they've researched on my YouTube channel about carrier oils, they start formulating their home brews differently.
Yeah, so what I would do, if anyone's listening to this wants to try it, I would try stearic acid, and I would try decanoic acid. That's C10. Decanoic acid is a ligand of PPR gamma, like telmisartan. So you could be injecting yourself with a little ligand of PPR gamma, the natural ligands, which are actually short chain saturated.
And if it's an organic one that's not refined, like Migliol 840 and 815, that's refined MCT oil, and Arachis is refined peanut oil, and those still cause inflammation, while the MCT oil itself doesn't cause inflammation. So, so even if it's pharmaceutical grade, if it's an Arachis oil, then it's not good. And
have you guys ever heard of sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, fine.
It was just about oils, and you mentioned C10. I was thinking, have you guys ever heard of C60 before for anti-aging or
C60?
Yeah, it's like this stuff called fullerene, and it goes by it's like Buckminster. I don't fucking remember the name. Just type in C60 fullerene on Google, and it's an allotrope of carbon whose molecule consists of carbon atoms connected by single and double bonds so as to form a closely or partially closed mesh. Anyways, it's supposed to be, it's super hyped up in the biohacking community about like managing a bunch of different diseases of aging, essentially.
But it's a lipophilic compound that allows you to dissolve pharmaceuticals? Or
no, I don't know. I was wondering in general if you guys have heard of it.
It's a very long chain fatty acid, so it's a 60 saturated fat.
60
right?
carbons, right? Okay.
Oh no, you said it's a polyunsaturated fat, huh?
I was just reading the
interesting. We'll check it out. So anyway, so the other thing I want to ask you, Steve, is with the acne, with the solvents and the carrier oils, do you notice it's basically about the inflammation level? Where when people have high inflammation, that's when they get the acne from the...
They get worse acne. I mean, they still predisposition to acne. So even if you change to pharmaceutical grade compounds that don't cause any systemic inflammation, and you keep your C-reactive protein as low as you can, you'll still get acne. It's just acne is so cumbersome. Acne, hair loss, libido, those three are the most complicated side effects that men using performance-enhancing drugs can experience. Hair loss is...
No, anxiety. Anxiety also.
Anxiety also, yeah. Okay, I have to agree.
Very hard to do.
Yeah. You have to tackle that from so many different aspects. And you can, you have, let's say you have 10 potential causes, and then you have to slowly start ticking them off, So and everybody has to tack off different boxes. So let's say you're using this propylene glycol formulation for injection convenience, and you switch to, compounding pharmacy using grapeseed oil, and no MCT, just benzoyl benzoate and benzoyl alcohol for sterility and solvency. And then maybe your acne is 10% better. Okay, then you have to look at your dairy intake, and then maybe your hygiene, or maybe you have a little bit of topical bacteria that you need to take care of with doxycycline, So there's many avenues to explore.
Just for the audience to put in perspective, like when you go online and you look for unique minoxidil formulations, one of the things you'll find from the MDs that are hair loss guys is that they'll say no propylene glycol. Like that's a selling statement for the minoxidil because it's so inflammatory even topically. So who knows what's going on when you're injecting this stuff?
I think
one interjection. Guess what? Sorry, Derek. Guess what? All the oral dropper SARMs are made with propylene glycol.
Oh, really?
That's why they taste goddamn 400 and shit like that.
Yeah. All these, you think SARMs are safe, and I don't have to inject. You still get systemic inflammation from the 2 or 3 milliliters of oral SARMs that you take. Because again, it's such a high solvent, and you'll taste it. It tastes like...
Yeah, you could taste that Cialis, the dropper Cialis that used to come from Enhanced Athlete. That used to taste like poison. Like you felt like your tongue was ripping up. You're like, this is not worth it. I don't need to have sex. This is not... What is this?
How many sources I talked to said, stop doing this because you're killing your customers. You're literally killing your customers over time with the solvency bullshit,
Yeah.
But half of them don't want to listen, so I put it online. So listen, at least I can educate some people.
I have some MK677 right now that I swear I could probably remove the paint from my walls with. I received this one that I took a little bit and I got a headache an hour later. I was like, this is inflammation. God damn, what is this thing? Yes. It tasted. Yeah.
So it's a little trick that I used to apply. It's not 100% foolproof, but it does work for most of the oil. So you take a little bit of the oil, you put it on your finger, and you start rubbing the ink off your syringe. I mean, everybody has syringes. Now, it's 90% it works because MCT does the same thing. It also wipes the ink off a syringe, but it doesn't cause any inflammation. And Araches oil doesn't wipe anything off, but it can cause inflammation. So it's not 100% foolproof method, but it's way cheaper than doing a blood test. And if it does wipe off, contact the source and say, hey, is this, what carrier oil is this? Oh, yeah, well, quantity sufficient. You just throw it away. If they don't want to say MCT, just throw it.
The one thing I wanted to mention is about skin stuff. The reason I wanted to mention is that I got a steamer recently. Have you guys ever tried this before?
Let's talk about your 15% minoxidil first. Have you tried ethanol and glycerin as your vehicle?
So I've only ever used minoxidil 15% from one source. And so I've used a brand called 2Gain, which is produced in India. I don't even know which solvent it uses, but it's been very effective historically when I tried it. Now that my hair is short, I thought, why not use it? Because the reason is just for the audience to know, although obviously everyone believes, including myself historically, that minoxidil must not protect hair from dying, it's just the idea that maybe minorly the growth factors, because in general in the body, growth factors prevent cells from apoptosis. So I think that plus the short-term effects of just having thicker hair may be worth it.
Do you think, something I've been wondering is when you get to the point of using like 15%, you're applying 150 milligrams to your head twice a day. Would you not simply be better off having a 2.5 milligram tablet and getting way more minoxidil sulfate conversion in the liver and probably getting maybe the same exact effect with less burden on your system potentially?
So I've tried both, and I've tried oral minoxidil for probably a week or so, a couple of years ago, and I had an arrhythmia from it. I noticed my heart rhythm was a little off.
But so 15% I got, you can tolerate with
zero effects, zero. So it's majorly different. And then by the way, Derek, that makes me think, because now I'm taking Dutasteride daily. That makes me think if you apply Dutasteride locally at a thick enough, at least you saturate that area. So it's just totally. But I guess the Dutasteride, like you said, it eventually will kill the hole in the system. But anyway, my point is just it's saturating that area.
If you saw some of the topical Dutasteride blood work, you'd be like, what the fuck is going on? It doesn't make any sense. But for whatever reason, topical finasteride, I don't know if it comes down to molecular weight, if it comes down to half-life, and it comes down to, some people just don't know how to report their shit properly. But topical finasteride easily goes systemic. And after, a couple of weeks of use, you're looking at the exact same hormonal profile systemically as oral finasteride. However, with topical Dutasteride, entirely different story. You have guys who are getting scalp biopsies done and finding giant reductions in scalp DHT, but keeping their systemic DHT in a therapeutic reference range, which is really, really weird. So I know tons of guys, well, not a ton, but at least a handful of guys who I, converse with about like advanced hair loss topics, and they have been able to get less side effects from topical Dutasteride and more effects than when they took oral and topical finasteride, which is totally contradictory to what you would think would happen. So their like go-to approach now is using topical Dutasteride, and that's it. And it works for them just fine. And there's some people who do the Dutasteride mesotherapy where they get it injected into their scalp.
Oh, wow. I never heard of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like becoming a more, well, it's not popular at all, but it's becoming more popularized in the community in Europe more so, where you go in like once a month or something, you get Dutasteride injected into a bunch of spots in your scalp, and you come back a few weeks later when the scalp DHT is kind of picked back up, and then you get them shotted again. And because it has such a long half-life, you can get away with going like very infrequently and getting hair loss prevention.
So my theory is that even if you're taking, so for example, in the finasteride case, you're taking finasteride in your scalp and your systemic levels are the same amount as if you were taking finasteride orally. That doesn't mean that your scalp levels of finasteride are the same. You may have more scalp levels because the skin is not very well, generally not very well vascularized or doesn't have great blood supply. So your serum levels are probably going to be higher than your
the scalp versus serum, it's like direct reflection of one another. Like I've looked at all the data.
Oh, really? Huh?
Yeah. So even with like the biopsies, they're showing topical finasteride it's not doing anything. Like you would hope, theoretically, if I have 5-alpha reductase is most dense in this area of tissue.
Okay, I have proof. Okay.
Well,
listen to this. I have proof. So I've tried this. So how about this? When I put Minoxidil on my hair for 6 months and my hair doubled in volume, my beard didn't get that much thicker. It got thicker, but not that much. And then I put my Minoxidil not on my beard even, but just here. And as I told you before, my beard went all the way up here. And it actually got annoying to the point where I had to stop doing it to get it to go back because I looked like a wolf. And then I've tried also putting Minoxidil somewhere else. I don't know where I put it exactly, but it was somewhere toward the back. And my hair on my neck started really growing thickly. Whereas when I put it on my head, the hair on the neck grew a bit, but not as much. So there is definitely and this would be over months at 15%. Yeah. So even though it went systemic, there's some kind of local.
No, I believe that on Minoxidil because we don't even understand really what the mechanism of action is fully. Like no one really knows what it's doing. Whereas with finasteride, we know what it's doing. It's targeting 5-AR, and I can tell you like where's the density of 5-AR. It's here. It's here.
No, I'm just talking about the Minoxidil. I think it works especially when you and I know people like there's so many studies that say 15% isn't more or 10% isn't more than 5%. But I've tried. I mean, like I told you, like my best friend, the Korean guy, he was on Minoxidil 5% for years with no finasteride, and by the age of 30, I got him on 10%, and I see him 6 months later, way more density.
Yeah, so it was like, I'm considering just biting the bullet and trying Minoxidil again personally, because it's like I just don't want to deal with the shed and frankly the bloat with something I didn't like. It's not like I've actually checked my genetics to see what my sulfotransferase enzyme activity supposedly is, like the gene that encodes for it, and how if I would be a responder or not. And supposedly I'd be a good responder. I just like have never followed through because every time I did it, I always had like I gained like 8 pounds of water in a week, and I was like, fuck this. So I just never did it. But it's definitely like for me, if I wanted to get to like perfect, I don't know, like 19-year-old density again, it's either, well, I could do like really aggressive shit, which I'm not going to do, or I can do like the mainstream stuff would be Minoxidil or Transplant would be like the two things to get back to what I would consider to be very, very good density that I'm like, I don't really give a fuck about hair loss anymore kind of thing. So I don't know, like to me, it's definitely like a lot that I've learned over the past few years too about compounding with tretinoin, adding in the microneedling, increasing the percentage concentration of minoxidil, comparing the efficacy of topical versus oral. Like a lot of it I've learned over the years that's just above and beyond just take your 5%, put it on your head, and like that's it. So it definitely has a lot of merit. And I'm definitely considering.
I actually think you're the foremost expert on this subject, genuinely. And the reason why I say that, it's not just said lightly, because I've listened to on Peter Atlia's podcast. I don't know if you heard the hair doctor guy who came on. I don't know if you heard him, Derek. So he has Alan Bauman, one of the top foremost hair guys. And I swear I listened to his thing and I was like, I know Derek knows far more about the subject.
I was so impressed. These guys don't have time to research as much, I feel like, because they actually have, it's like the consultation thing where it's like you either make your money with clients or you invest your time into yourself. And like, which are you going to do? So like, even talking about like topical Dutasteride again, I think I was like one of the first people to, like, so much of the bodybuilding stuff crosses over with the hair loss. So I was the first person to talk about how when you apply something like a cream or sublingual or something, you skip first pass in the liver, which is also responsible for the production of some of these Dutasteride metabolites that have their own inherent anti-5-alpha reductase inhibitory properties. So you're actually changing the entire inhibition properties of the drug potentially very significantly when you apply topically versus taking it orally as well, which a lot of people don't think about. When you take finasteride orally, you get different metabolites, or at least quantity of metabolites, than you do when you apply it orally, and like vice versa for Dutasteride, and potentially significant enough of a difference that it's like not a totally different drug, but it's like you're getting a different proportion of these metabolites that have their own 5-AR inhibiting properties.
Let's talk transplants, because So my friend sent me his blood work. So my good friend from high school the other day sent me his blood work. He's like, hey, you want to look through my blood work? So I looked through it. I was like, hey, your lipids are doing great. Everything's gone way better. And then I was like, whoa, your C-reactive protein is 13. What the hell happened to you? Are you sick? So he said, oh, I knew you were going to ask about this. I said, what's going on? So he said, I bit the bullet. I said, what? Because he had just told me, I said, I haven't heard from you for a month. Where have you been? He said, I went to Kenya for 2 weeks. Then I went to Iran for 2 weeks. I said, he grew up in Kenya, but I was like, Iran? So then he's like, I bit the bullet. I did the hair transplant. So I was like, oh, this is what the C-reactive protein. It was 13, by the way. So apparently he did he said 3 days of 8 hours. I don't know if it was, but he did 15,000 hair follicles.
Yeah, it's a shit ton. That's
a lot. He said he got a discount. Yeah. He went all in. He went all in.
Yeah. That's I don't know how much of your donor area that is, but I would imagine he doesn't have I don't know how much left. It's not even my area of expertise, to be honest. You can tell how.
I know. It's usually 5,000 max or 10,000 maximum, and maybe they'll do it step by step. I asked him, my question was, he hasn't responded yet. He's really hairy. I said, was it from your chest? Because it's a lot of hair to 15,000. I'm like, bro, you don't have that much. But the point is this. What I want to ask you about is, Derek, is this. So look. So some of us, like me, I have to actually, when I go to the barber, I have to line out the edge of my hair here. So there's actually, okay, for the audience to know, this isn't as weird as it sounds. So when you do a hair transplant, you got to pick hairs, usually from here. You try to do individual follicles, but at some point, you're going to start thinning the sides here. So you're really redistributing stuff. So ideally, you'd like to distribute stuff that you don't have to. At some point, a lot of people start putting some chest hair or some back hair in the middle here to try to fill in things where you can't really see the texture of it. But anyway, so the point is, what I was going to say is, I was thinking these things are really unnecessary. These should be moved somewhere. And, so I was thinking, why not start there? That's no loss. And then you could start with a little bit of these on the side, maybe, But anyway, are you going to plan it earlier? Because this is the problem, right? When you start receding, you can see I have a little bit here of recession, right? So once you start not having this line, which I have, it's so hard to rebuild your hairline. Even with a toupee, I don't know if you noticed, I watched your video, Derek, where you put where that guy had glued his hair thing on. Yeah. He had a bit of recession here on the side. So when he put it on at the top, you could tell it wasn't real because it was a bit here. So you never want to lose this hairline, right? So I was thinking for the younger guys listening to us, if you really care about your hair, you might want to get the first couple of transplants on your actual hairline, just thickening it a bit so you know where the hairline is. Of course, those are the hardest ones to do because the hair has to point the right direction. And so you have to have an expert.
Yeah. I've been sort of fortunate in my pattern that it's diffuse, whereas, a lot of people, they get the traditional recession and then this part stays super dense. Whereas for me, it's just diffuse, going backwards fully. So I don't know. For me, I think if I got a transplant, it would be very easy to make it look good because I already have the structural integrity is still intact sort of thing. So, but yeah, I'm not really sure what the best strategy would be. I would imagine it's just if it were me, I would just find the most credible surgeon and be take their advice, I guess. I don't know. For me, I'm not really sure.
Well, all the hair transplants that I've seen are done very, very nicely.
Because you live in Thailand.
No, not here, but the guys that did it in Dubai or Brazil or whatever, because you get a lot of travelers here, right? And they tell me, hey, well, I want you and Leo and Derek, but I got a transplant. It's too cumbersome. So they just do a one-time thing. And it looks beautiful. You don't even can't even tell. You might have a little bit of a dot, where they took the donors from. We have a little bit of scarring. But
no, I bet you Derek disagrees. I bet Derek, don't you often see a line
Oh, I see people
I see it all the time. All the time.
No,
I see it. Because it's too easily done.
It's because me and Leo look for this stuff, whereas you are you don't research things you don't have as a problem. Yeah.
More for me, it's mostly acne, and the acne scars. And then I see, you used to have acne in the past. We all get our expertise with the issues that we face, right? So, but I see a lot of this derma where you do the little dots, to
I'm about
fill
to
it
start
in.
that too. Yeah, I want to ask you, Derek, is that this derma roller? Should people be doing this? Is the optimal thing once or twice a week?
It depends on the depth and what you're doing. And to be honest, as far as what you're trying to accomplish with it, it gets kind of complicated because on the one hand, the more frequent you're doing it with a shallower depth, you can hypothetically enhance the absorption of minoxidil. in addition to that, you might be able to upregulate. Supposedly, there's like the evidence that suggests that you can upregulate the sulfotransferase enzyme activity through this like punching process, which is the whole thing that activates minoxidil, essentially converts it to the sulfated form. But 1.5 millimeters is where you get like the recruitment of growth factors to recover the damage you've inflicted upon yourself, which also has hair growth properties too. But then you can't do 1.5 millimeters frequently throughout the week. You're like literally have a bloody scalp by the end and your scalp's irritated. It would be like doing the most hard back workout of your life and then trying to max out on deadlifts like a day later. You can't really do it until you've recovered at least like for me personally, my scalp gets red as fuck to the point where I'd have to wait like 3 days before I could even think about touching it again with a microneedling device.
Oh, but could you use minoxidil the next day?
I've noticed that every time you wear a cap, then you know.
Yeah.
Oh, is that why you wear a cap? When you wear that funny cap that's like a small cap?
Usually, but now I just like filming is such a priority that I don't even microneedle lately because I can't afford to be on camera with like a bloody fucking head at all anymore because I'm recording every single night.
Literally yesterday, I was watching one of your videos, and suddenly Derek comes and he has this hat. I was like, I've never seen a hat before. What's going on? I was like, Derek wears hats. Does he? Yeah. Anyway, okay, so
like it's unsightly if you've just done it and you go record. It's like, what the hell happened? You get like. You like burn your fucking head or something?
I would do the same, when I have pimples and that need a little bit of an intervention to clean out. Yeah, I would do it after recording or the night before, so all the inflammation will be gone. Because on those, HD cameras, like on Zoom, you don't really see it, but on an HD camera, you're like, what the hell is that? It's like it's like somebody punched you in the face, like a little boiler. Yeah, it's nasty. Yeah. And
guys, I forgot
to point it out.
There, go ahead.
So the one thing I would say about the microneedling is the best data we have is using 1.5 millimeter depth once a week. And we know for a fact this recruits at least the microneedling induced growth factors and recovery factors and whatnot. But as far as does that trump the enhancing absorption of minoxidil by doing a more frequent, shallower protocol? I don't know. Some of the best results I've seen are by guys who are doing like half a millimeter like every other day and then applying their minoxidil like right after, which is you would never apply your minoxidil right after a 1.5 millimeter session though, because you're literally have wounds on your head and you might as well be taking oral minoxidil at that point. So I don't know, like if it were me, I would probably if I was trying to go for maximum absorption, I might try the more frequent, shallower version personally.
Do you use a numbing cream?
No, even for 1.5 millimeters, I don't. And anybody who can't handle it either, I think has, I don't know, just like a.
Oh, so it's no big deal. Okay.
No, it's not. Okay. It's guarantee the stuff you've lived through in your life. There's no way you're going to be like. I've
done a lot of things. I've done a lot. I just recently injected Cerebrolysin in my neck, so
it's like some guys literally like rub their head and like fucking numbing stuff, and I'm like, dude, it's not that bad. Like
no, it's my wife. My wife told me I had to. That's why I'm asking you. My wife is like, I bought the thing, and she's like, oh, you don't have the numbing cream? I was like, numbing cream? I need numbing cream, so that's why I get to ask you. But I was like, I don't think these guys need numbing cream. But anyway, I wanted to ask a bit of the steamer though, guys. So I've been trying the steamer for a couple of times after I went to the gym. I've used a steamer you can buy like a portable steamer for your face. Put like a blanket over your head right after your workout while your skin is hot and everything. And it steams your face and like you sweat out whatever toxins you have in your face and stuff like that. I'm not that I know anything about skin, but this has been the most effective thing I've ever done for my skin other than my limited trials with tretinoin. It's similar to tretinoin's effects. Tretinoin closing the pores down, this one cleaning the skin like unbelievably. I imagine that the combination of the two would be very synergistic.
I used to do that every week back home in Holland. Just go to steam bath, over. Yeah, it's homemade stuff, So you get a little bucket, you pour the boiling water in the towel over your head, and you wait 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Because I noticed whenever I get, what is it called, the flu, and you get all congested in your nose. Yeah. I would do that as well, and I noticed that my skin texture would improve. But now that I live in Thailand, it's completely unnecessary because as soon as I go out, I start pouring sweat, and especially training for 2 hours, I everything flushes out. I sweat in every area, everywhere basically, besides my hands. Even there is sweat. So it improved my skin texture tremendously, but just by sweating all day. But if you live in a colder climate, it definitely helps. Yeah. And even when you go to the dermatologist, before they, start working through your old pimples, they will put that steamer on your face just to open up all the pores.
Really interesting. Actually, I have a steamer and I have this machine that actually sucks. It's like a light suction device. Yeah. But my wife told me to stop using it because apparently, I just started, but she told me apparently it can potentially widen your pores with time. I don't know if it's true. By the way, if anyone's listening to this and they know, please. Oh, Derek, do you know? Is this true?
No, I was just surprised.
That thing is really effective, Derek. That sucking thing, that's unbelievable. It's so quick. Like you just go like this, and your skin is unbelievable. But I don't know if it's damaging.
The problem is it increases your sebum production.
Yeah,
it's like
really? I wonder what would happen for me because I've taken Accutane. If that would still happen.
No, then probably not. But I remember using that suction device. So you would steam, or in my case, my pores are always open. So you just use that suction device and pull it out, and then you notice that it comes back faster. And that was on Accutane.
Where'd you apply it, Leo? Because I've had this one like little spot on my nose that's like not gone away. It's like a jammed up like pore or something.
Same here. Will not go away.
I'll send you I'll send you the name of it. It's really awesome. It's a great. I bought it twice. I've had it for years actually. Every so often I used to use it. It's really effective.
You can buy them on Amazon. There's many different Chinese or AliExpress. So I used it, but I noticed that my sebum got worse. Production got worse, even running Accutane, so I stopped using it.
I think it may be useful in limited cases, at least.
Yeah. At least
without using the steamer. It's just so fast. Like that thing, whatever it is, if you steam first and just touch it, it's gone. You don't have to break your skin and pop things and do that kind of stuff, which I assume is way more damaging. I mean, how could
bad inflammation from that?
Yeah. So anyway. But let's talk about Conor Murphy. Steve, tell me, what is going on with Conor Murphy? I want to ask Steve because Derek has analyzed him already. But Steve, explain to me. You're from Holland. So what's going on with him?
So there's two ways you can approach life, right? And we all have our directions and our experimentation phases. So I experimented with recreational drugs when I was younger because I'm from Holland and it's literally everywhere. You can't use steroids in Holland. It's very frowned upon. But weed and LSD and MDMA and all that stuff, no problem. No problem at all. Everybody, or at least the people that I used to talk with, everybody experimented to a certain extent. And I've done my fair share of experimentation in my younger years. And then there's a couple people who continue with that and fall off the bandwagon and turn into a guy like Conor Murphy, where everything is extreme and you can't even relate to it anymore. Now, I honestly think that, eating feces and drinking urine, that was an April Fool's joke.
Yeah.
You never know, dude. You never know.
You don't Conor, really know.
Probably know. But eating another man's semen, that's so far beyond me, I can't even begin to speculate why. And I've met some interesting people in my days,
Wait a minute. We got to comment on this. So, okay, I think that's more understandable than the excrement part because at least that could be hypersexuality from just to be a little scientific. So I think, you were saying that maybe he is not being serious about what he's saying. But the thing is, if you guys notice when he's talking to the camera, he is smiling ear to ear.
Oh, yeah. It freaks me out a bit, dude.
Yes. So he's just like...
There's a brain chemistry issue there. Yeah.
Yes. So what it
looks
is...
like somebody that's been mega dosing DMT, or Salvia.
It looks like the Joker. It looks like the Joker from Batman. And it's like literally a guy who's went off the dopaminergic deep end where he's... But I'm not making fun of him. But realistically, though, I mean it genuinely. What happens, just for the audience to know, is sometimes, I know we'll let Steve continue, but just for the audience to know scientifically, sometimes two things can do this to people often. One is like extreme changes in psychic states. So you can do a very intense mushroom trip or a very intense DMT trip, and that could be enough to dysregulate someone's dopamine. So there's a dopamine hypothesis of schizophrenia, and there's a dopamine hypothesis of bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder has an element of it called manic mania, which is what that smiling, that thing is in general. It's like mania where the person is so upbeat and so optimistic and ambitious. Usually you see a lot of optimism, a lot of hopefulness for the future in these states. So this often happens with an individual psychedelic experience or a few of them, or extended high dopaminergic signaling from like amphetamines or cocaine or stuff like that. So I think that he was genuine. I think that he really that he's really in a dopaminergic state like that. And second of all, when you're in a highly dopaminergic state, you get hypersexualized, right? Yeah. So I think maybe there's an excuse that you're curious and maybe it has some nutrients in it. That's a good excuse.
His Instagram is now very tantric. You know, it's
is
like
it really?
half the pictures are like tantric postures. So what it reminds me of is that people that use a little bit too much recreational drugs and they completely destroyed their ego to the point they don't understand really what they're actually trying to portray. Like, it's okay to destroy your ego and humble yourself and, you know, put life into perspective, sort of say, with an occasional LSD or mushroom or, you know, DMT. There's nothing wrong with that, ayahuasca. But you see that with the guys that do MDMA every weekend, you know, they get, you know, mentally completely dysregulated, you know, because their serotonin system is completely up and down. And it's the same with the guys that do ayahuasca or mushrooms or LSD or whatever, psychedelic frequently. Their ego gets destroyed in the process. And a lot of guys, they completely disconnect from life. And that's what I see with Connor. He's just completely disconnected. And in his brain, it's all makes sense. But for the rest of us who are not that disconnected, or not that enlightened, it's basically the same pathway.
I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs like nuke their fucking brains. Like now you could argue that they, you know, like the outcome and it's a good thing because they're, you know, super spiritual now and blah, blah, blah. But clearly what was important to them before, they have like no drive anymore to do anything. Yeah. And it's like, they're just floating through life.
Yeah,
lackadaisically apathetic about fucking everything, zero ambition anymore. It's just like, I'm one with the fucking ground, the sun, the moon, the whatever. Who cares about anything?
There's a couple guys in Thailand walking around like this right at this moment, completely very driven in the past, and then they do the recreationals and so this is the same with this pickup artist stuff, right? That we discussed, to get it out of your system before you meet the woman of your life. You get that out of your system, and it's the same with recreational drugs. You do that in your younger years when you know, you kind of you lower your ego and you kind of process life's bigger questions. And then once you're a little bit older and you're financially secure, you got that out of your system. So you don't feel like diving headfirst into these psychedelics. And then you completely, you know, break yourself apart and go in a completely different direction in life. Because when you're, you know, a little bit older, you should focus on, you know, security, financial security, and being there for your partner. And as you know, basic as it sounds, you know, you get your house, your car, and your partner and your dog, right? It does contribute to the quality of your life, and just falling that all apart and taking the, you know, psychedelics to be enlightened, you'll not get anywhere because you'll burn through all your cash.
Yeah, that's what freaks me out about the like the Connor thing. The thing that freaks me out is seeing him, for example. Now it's like not just him that this has happened to, but people who I've seen who are like very entrepreneurial individuals, or guys who had a lot of drive to do something that they felt was, you know, they were building some sort of empire for themselves, and then they just like don't give a fuck at all anymore, it seems, afterwards.
But did they reach their financial goals, where they're self-made millionaires, or they didn't reach that point?
Well, like Connor definitely was successful, but there's no way he like fully capitalized on what he could have. Like he was very, very young when he reached like a hyper accelerated peak, and like he could have gone way further with it if he really wanted to, but then, you know, I guess he got into the spirituality stuff. And this is, you know, I've just seen generally with a lot of different people this happened to. So it's kind of like overall freaked me out of ever trying psychedelics personally. Now, maybe that's like the bad, you know, the number one examples of a bad reaction potentially. So maybe it's like, I'm sure anyone who's tried it and has had good experiences would say they're not the representatives of what this stuff can do. But at the same time, it's like, do I really want to risk fucking with my brain chemistry? Even though we literally do that for biohacking, but I mean, like, to this degree where you're a totally different human essentially afterwards, I'm like,
use and abuse, it's different. You know, there's use where you intermittently use a recreational drug for enjoyment or escape. I mean, I won't lie. I mean, most of my drug use was escapism when I was younger, and parents going through divorces, and you're like, okay, I need a break, and you use some recreational drugs to kind of get away from it all. That many people do, and there's nothing wrong with that unless you spiral into addiction. Now, if you use it intermittently for a specific purpose, there's nothing wrong with that at any stage of life. But it's this frequent and consistent, and again, the escapism that turns into abuse or addiction, that's where the issues lie. So I wonder, for some of your friends, Derek, maybe they reached all their financial goals and they got a lot of pressure, and they worked their ass off, right? And then at one point they're like, okay, I'm satisfied with what I've accomplished, and now I'm going to relax. And then again, since they didn't do that in their younger years, that spirals into frequent use to the point that they get personality changes. I've seen that happen many times also around me as well. And I think people need to pull themselves back in all aspects, whether that's bodybuilding, financially driven, relationships, and balance. I know it's very difficult and annoying to say, but if you can balance all aspects of life, you never overdo one of them, but you never underperform either.
Leo, so you don't see
it stays. I have an afro now. It just like any position anyway. Yeah. So what are you saying?
So you don't see considering you're like a gut microbiome guy, you don't see any efficacy in the fecal transplants?
Oh wait, we have so much to talk about the addiction thing though, briefly. But about the
that's
fecal
like about the Connor Murphy shit thing.
Yeah. So it's not that I don't see it. So the idea of the fecal transplants, right, is to introduce bacteria actually into the microbiome, in the hopes that the bacteria will live on its own or repopulate the microbiome. But I haven't looked into research of the fecal transplants, but what I know from the probiotic research is that it's never long lasting. So if you supplement probiotics, it goes away after 3 months and also what I know from genetic research is that there's genetic polymorphisms that are associated with the variety of bacteria we have, the volume of it, and so on, and several polymorphisms, not just one. So I think a lot of things, I think there's a homeostasis that will occur. So I don't want to keep...
It's not sustainable like a probiotic supplementation regimen could be.
Unless you want to put people's stuff up your stuff. I mean, as you said, put people's shit up your shit.
The fecal transplant...
Funny, by the way. I replayed that one. Really enjoyed it.
I met people who had to do that because they traveled through India or Indonesia, where their gut microbiome got completely destroyed, and they had to do a fecal transplant, and that's a process that takes a year or longer, and they have tablets, and then you have to select 1 or 2 individuals that you're going to use this fecal transplant from.
Like you wouldn't use your own, which is the thing that made no sense.
Because that's messed up. No, so the only animal that does that is rodents.
Imagine the person who didn't get it, who has an autoimmune condition, who's sitting at home trying that out themselves, putting it back in anyway.
No, you need it from somebody else who's healthy, That's the only reason why you would do it.
How do you select the person is the question. Who is this person? You're like, would you give me one of the, I want to put it in me. Anyway.
I know a person who got that requested from him. He's got awesome genetics, and he stays lean year round and doesn't lose any size. And somebody requested him for a fecal transplant. Offered him money.
Prosthetics?
Sorry? No. A local guy in Thailand. He's the genetics out of his ass. It's unbelievable. And somebody offered him, said, "Listen,
I thought that's what you meant by the. I was just guessing the genetic phenome that you know."
No. At least Joe has to put in the work. He's 2 hours per cardio per day. He's putting in the work. But this other guy is lean year round and doesn't lose any size when he goes on cycle. So he doesn't do PCT. Really? He just goes on cycle, gains size, comes off, doesn't lose any size, doesn't look any different. I see the blood work. He's clearly off cycle. And then he goes on cycle again and gains another 2 or 3 kilos on a cycle that doesn't make any sense. So he got offered, somebody who said, "Give me your stool." But he rejected it.
That's an interesting response to that, by the way. Yeah. You're like, "Oh, this guy has great genetics for getting mass. Give me your bacteria."
Yeah.
That's of all things,
People
but
are
also,
desperate,
just for people to know, like, honestly, sometimes when I hear that, I'm like, "Oh, wow, what great genetics." But at the same time, in my mind, I'm thinking, I would never really want that because I'd be scared. If you're growing that easily, what else is growing in your body?
Everything.
I'd rather have a harder time to grow, but then when I try and make sure nothing grows, nothing grows.
Everything, because as soon as you put these guys in growth hormone, their stomach starts protruding.
Yeah, that's a sign that they have good IGF-1 receptivity. Okay, so wait, back to this drug issue so we don't forget. So I just wanted to mention, like, so I have some opinions on this. So the psychedelic experiences, I want to ask you guys, who do you think are the people who benefit the most from those subjective single experiences? Like Derek, even though you haven't tried it yourself, but you've heard of people like these entrepreneurs that you talk about, which of them had this is how you usually see it. You see a guy who will be, this is my experience. It'll usually be a guy who didn't party a lot in undergrad or whatever, didn't go out a lot, and was stuck in his ways, very focused, or her ways, and is a person that isn't very flexible. Is a person that's sort of stuck in their ways, and a person maybe that didn't experience all the things outside themselves or outside their own lifestyle. Those people I tend to notice have potentially profound experiences, trying mushrooms once or something like that. But when they do have profound experiences that change their lives, they usually don't go use it every 3 months afterwards. Then you'll meet people that, like myself, have had all kinds of experiences in life, but we'll try a psychedelic because other people are doing it, and then we'll say they love it and then do it every month. Like we've seen a bunch of people that, like, they tried DMT once and then 8 months later you met him and he's like, oh, I've done DMT 8 times. And you're like, you do it every month? What's the purpose of that? So what have you guys seen about that?
Like personally, above and beyond what I mentioned, and a lot of these aren't necessarily personal friends. It's just people I've observed even on like YouTube and watch their personalities totally change from when they used to make videos and like what they were doing with their life when they prior to these experiences, and then after, and like totally dissociating themselves from their driven passions beforehand and just being like, monk spiritual guy afterwards, and like not really giving a fuck about anything, at least seemingly to me, to my like, trivial, non-enlightened passions. No, I guess
trivial. It's not trivial. I've actually been there, and that's what it feels like. It feels like that you lose. You're totally on point. And if anyone in the comment section has tried psychedelics and is going to say he's not on point, I've tried them a lot, and it's happened to me before. Yeah. I lost ambition for years.
But I mean, like, my perception is that they see the goals that you would have as a non-enlightened person as trivial, and then post experience they see a lot of the shit that like materialism, capitalism type stuff as like, oh, look at this like idiot who's doesn't understand like how to be one with the fucking sun, moon, and ground. Like, you know what I mean?
You see that in me now, Derek. Don't you notice that's in me sometimes? Like how I don't pick up on some stuff like real fast when it's a business thing. I'm like late. I don't move on it. And then I tell you like I'm not driven by it. That's the effects of that, bro. That's where that came from. From years of that. That's where it came from. There were periods of that's how I lost my interest in the material world and my ego and stuff like that. But this is the thing, like Steve was saying. The total ego destruction, it's debilitating. You lose your sense of self. You can, maybe Derek, you can't imagine this, but Steve, I'm sure you've experienced this maybe sometime when you're using a lot of it. You start to be so compassionate of others and so at one with the universe that you don't have a sense of self. Like people can just bully you around. You just go along with it because you want to be kind. Yeah, and then you don't take control of your life. So there's, like Steve was saying, there has to be a balance. Sorry, I will let you continue, but there has to be a balance between the ego. It's not overwhelming, but it can't be dead. Otherwise, you don't exist. You're dead.
In terms of the materialism thing too. Sorry, I'm just gonna like finish off my point before you go, Steve. But it's like the thing that I realized too is, so it seems to disconnect you. Like, again, I've never done it, so I can't fucking say it, but it seems like you start to care less about things that are seen as trivial, like, materialistic type behaviors, which I've noticed, Leo, you're like, you don't really give a fuck about that kind of stuff anymore. Whereas personally, I'm like, in my head, a lot of my objectives, I still have a lot of financial motivation. I still have a lot of stuff that's like very goal oriented with like obtain this, get this, do this to achieve this. And I think in a way, like that's, great that you can not feel dependence for your value based upon, random shit that you get. But at the same time, when you're trying to build companies, that the overarching goal of the company is to help people, like for example, in healthcare, like, am I going to be as driven to make a shit ton of money, which will also indirectly help a bunch of people in healthcare through, my clinic and how I'm going to expand it and whatnot? If I had this ego death thing, like, I feel like I probably wouldn't. So indirectly, even though enlightened Derek would give a less of a fuck about maybe like a cool car and like stuff like this, at the same time, I feel like my business would suffer that otherwise helps a shit ton of people. So I don't know.
I would agree with that. I think there's again, I was exposed to this drug culture very, very young, and I would always hang out with older people, so they would, maybe 18, 19 years old when I was 16 or 15 years old. So they would already be the cool kids, right? And do some recreational drugs. And then you see with frequent use, people would lose motivation. They would not go to school or go work, and their overall ambition has been degraded, partially because of the ego death. With psychedelics, with the guys that would use stimulants, they would just, go balls deep and still continue. There's a lot of cocaine abuse in, consultancy and, in those kind of fields, because you have to meet deadlines, right? So I've been exposed to that for a long time. I never partook to that extent. I would always use it intermittently for a specific reason, whether that was to escape for a certain period of time, or because I wanted to put my life into perspective and take a step back. Like, let's say you put all your problems on ground level, and then you would take an elevator to the 40th floor and observe, right? That will basically be an LSD trip or a mushroom trip. And then you would come back down to ground level, and all your problems would be put in perspective, and you carry on, right? So I never lost financial incentive or drive, but it could be that my overall ambition have been taken a step back, because I don't want the stress that comes along with this super high ambition. And that's one of the reasons why I took so many people out of my life. So that's why I moved away from Holland, right? I don't want particular things in my life, and I completely changed my surroundings to get everything to what I want from my life. Right? And a little bit of ego death occurred, and a little bit of manipulating of these surroundings occurred. That's why I told, Derek, said, hey, travel a little bit, because you can't, there's certain things you can't accomplish from behind your computer screen. Try to see the world a little bit. And now would be a perfect time. Like, and I already got that out of my system, because traveling changed me as a person, even though I already, did a psychedelic trip, prior. And there's several things that can form you as a person, and that might take away some of your ambition, because, what I see also from people that were very driven at my age back then, when I was 26, below 30, then they get into this overcompensation state later in life, because they missed out on other aspects that they wanted to do. And then the sports car comes into play, or the recreational.
That's when it may be useful.
So it's very difficult to kind of come up with a good trajectory on how to approach it, because not everybody benefits from taking recreational drugs, and the people who do benefit, you have to reel them back also, because the ego gets down, and then you have to reel them back into the abuse, where people spiral into, frequent use. That's also not the right approach. And trust me, I've seen all these guys around me spiral into drug abuse at one point or another.
So there's a brain connectivity network that actualizes the sense of self. And it seems this network can be broken up through the plasticity and change in connectivity in the brain during those psychic shifts. So that may be what is actually physically happening with the death of the ego. But what Derek was referring to, this loss of ambition, is a downregulation of dopamine receptors specifically. And this will happen to anyone that's not using a highly dopaminergic drug. So even if someone is using an opiate at a high dose, eventually they lose interest. So it doesn't have to be just a psychedelic.
But isn't
so two things will happen
with frequent use, whereas you would use it maybe once a year.
So, let's get into that. Let's get into that. Exactly. So I wanted to bring up that topic. So what do you think about this, Steve? What do you think of in Holland? I don't know if Holland has a drinking culture, but Europe in general has a drinking culture. So usually you'll see that on the weekends, at least, people will go drinking a little bit, or usually in England, even on the weekdays, people go to the pub. What I would notice is this: when I worked in finance, is that the people who would go partying on the weekend tended to be a little bit less upbeat on the weekdays. at work. They tended to be a little bit less. When they come in the morning, they're not smiling like we are. They don't come and network and say hi to everybody with the same energy. They come in a little bit like, and the day has to get started. And their dopamine is dysregulated. Normally, dopamine peak in the morning. But if you go and burst it off on the weekend, it seems a little dysregulated.
I think it's just a hangover and missing meals in the weekend,
because they do it all week. They're never the same level of the people that are totally teetotalers. The people that they're always on the same level of, because imagine the difference is also beyond that. Think of this, Steve, too, right? Which is something that Derek brought up, which is this idea that, right, you, Derek, want to change the outside world because there's something within you that you don't like. And instead of going and taking a drug and sitting in a closed room and hitting the drug till you make yourself happy about the world, whatever, which is really a lot of what drug taking is taking control of your actual, instead of trying to change the world like Derek is and being fundamental, like, okay, I don't like this or I want to improve this, I'm going to go do it. Instead of doing that, once you take this element of I can control my happiness with this little drug that I really like at home, when it's not a psychedelic, when it's like, it could even be marijuana. That will just change your whole perception of the world because now you don't have to rely on changes in the exterior world to get that dopamine boost. You can just do it yourself.
Yeah. Then everything's out of perspective. Is really zero. So, I do know people who take it intermittently again and then use that experience to change their surroundings and their trajectory in life. So that went a little bit more in this aspect and they take action. And maybe it's this, experience that they had that allowed them to open up. Like when I had an LSD trip, I realized I can't live in Holland. Nothing here is suitable for what I want out of my life. So I took a couple of years, but I changed my surroundings. So it led me in a positive direction. And now I live in a perfect place where 99% of what I want out of my life I can find here. And I've traveled all over the world, so and so I put it into practice. But a lot of people, they just use it as an escape. Day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out. And the ambition and the ego and the aspirations are completely gone. And they just cruise along. They just drift. Through life. And that's basically addiction,
I mean, if I think about it, like looking back, Derek, now I didn't know you never tried psychedelics. So like, it's interesting to talk to you from that perspective. Looking back, I used to think for many years after I developed that ego death, which really hurt me actually. It was not a pleasant feeling, to be honest with you, after a while. But after I did that for a while, I started to think that overall, I thought drugs took more out of me than I got out of them. I still think that, to be honest with you. And so I don't necessarily, not drugs. I'm talking about hedonistic drugs only. I'm not talking about drugs in general. But hedonistic drugs, I don't believe that they're very useful. And I think that most people would be fine without the psychedelic stuff. But I have to admit something. Like, even though, so what you're talking about, like somebody goes through life and then they get a midlife crisis because they realize maybe what they were doing, they didn't want to live. Or Steve, you were living in Holland and then you had that experience. You realize, I don't want to live in Holland. And if you didn't have that experience, maybe at 40, you would have realized that, but it'd be too late, right? So a similar thing happened to me in a way. When I was 21, I did a really heavy psychedelic trip. And I was at the time a religious person and I followed a certain religion dogmatically. I would prayed 5 times a day and I was sort of trapped in the religion because I couldn't stop believing in it, even though some things didn't make sense to me. I'm like a very loyal person and I had this, I believed in the religion. I couldn't get out of it. One night I did this trip and I believed in it completely. But when I did the trip, I realized something in the text of the religion that was contradictory, self-contradictory. And this thing hit me and I literally sat, I remember at 2 a.m. and wrote it on a piece of paper so I wouldn't forget. I wrote down there's this phrase, these two are incompatible. One phrase says, God is all merciful, all forgiving. And the other phrase says, there is an eternal hellfire. Well, my knowledge of mathematics tells me if there's an infinite punishment, you can never be considered infinitely good because the infinite negative, that doesn't work. Yeah. So that's illogical. That was enough for me. Then once I got past that, I was like, oh, wow, this thing is actually, and I don't want to offend anyone, but I thought it was not true. And that just changed my life. Now it hurt me and it threw me through some emotional turbulence, but I came out. Now I believe in God and I pray and everything, but I do it in a realistic fashion. And I don't believe in some things that I now think were not true. And so it helped me get out of myself enough to be able to do that. So I thought I'd show you personal story.
Overall, these experiences contribute to you forming as a person. Just if you want to be a full person, you have to experience the broad perspective of it. But there's limitations to that, where you start eating feces and another man's semen. That would be like the bar that there's a limit. You should set a limit for yourself.
But there's a limit beyond that, which is, we should just mention one last caveat for the audience. The reason why you have to be so careful about using psychedelics, like Derek said, is because there is a chance that you have a break, and then you never go back to normal. So just to tell from personal experience, I had a very close friend in high school. He's Canadian, actually, Derek. I may have mentioned him to you before. And we went to college, and everybody in college, the first semester from high school, because we lived in Dubai, there's no marijuana in Dubai. So when they went to the US, to Canada and North America, the first semester, everyone wants to smoke weed. This was like 2006, and like weed was very exciting and stuff. So everybody smoked weed, everybody was normal, except me. I wasn't smoking weed. But 4 or 5 months down the line, my friend, one of the guys out of the whole group, so like out of 12 guys, one of them went, he says bipolar, I'm not sure, but he went manic, and then he became bipolar disorder or schizophrenia. But for the next years, he had to drop out. He couldn't talk to us. Like, I would go meet him. It would break my heart, bro. Like, I would be talking to him and he was not there. Like, he could not be there. And then if they would take him off the tranquilizers, he would get in a manic state. But instead of Connor being about like feces and stuff, he was about politics. And he would get like really into politics, but it wouldn't make sense. You would see that he was just so upbeat and not making sense, getting lost. And the misery and the pain he felt. And bro, all of it was because for a few months, he played with mushrooms and weed a little bit. He didn't know that he had a GABAergic deficiency. He, like me, was a naturally on edge person in high school. Later, years later, I come across papers that hypothesize that maybe people with naturally low inhibition, people naturally on edge, are more prone to these singular events that could destroy them forever. And by the way, years later, he just went back to college at the late 20s, finally finished the degree and just got a job. And poor guy, he's just getting his life back together. It's been 8 years. So that can happen to you guys.
I met many people like this. And I don't keep it. Yeah, in Holland, all these guys experiment a little bit, but they experiment way too long and too much. And so again, there's use and abuse, and there's nothing wrong with occasionally drinking some alcohol or taking some other recreational drugs. But if it spirals into daily use, and that's what people, performance enhancing drugs are basically the same thing. You're always on PEDs. And you're just exchanging one for the other, and you're constantly on biohacking. And it takes its toll also, to the point you have to go back to physiological amounts. I think there's just a limited amount of things you can do with your body until it starts to break, and you can use it for certain aspects, but if it spirals into frequent use, there's a price to pay, basically.
So we should also mention, just for the audience, if people ever do use a psychedelic, especially LSD, DMT, mushrooms, and you want to potentially inhibit the risk a little bit, have somebody with you that has a 5-HT2 antagonist, a dopamine antagonist, and a beta blocker. Those are the 3 things you need to inhibit. If you get into a point where your paranoia is very high, you need to take like something like Seroquel under doctor supervision, who's sitting with you, like 200, 300 milligrams of Seroquel, which will block the 5-HT2C and the dopamine receptors and slow down. Because I believe the level of paranoia and the level of excitement, that's when the break happens. That combined with the plasticity, that's when the break happens. So you want to immediately block it if it gets too bad. It should never be terrifying.
Yeah, and you should go in with a good state of mind.
Good state of mind. You have to be a very good state, good mood. You never do that even with alcohol. By the way, if you have a very bad day and you go drinking, sometimes it will be you'll be angry while drunk, or not angry, but like not in a good mood.
I knew that since I was 14 years old that you shouldn't do that. Because you see that around you. Yeah, but it's with every recreational drug. You should go in there with a clear state of mind and being sound. But a lot of people are not. Whether that even anxiety. If you're experiencing anxiety, or you have episodes of anxiety, you should not use recreational drugs, even for escapism, because it will just exacerbate, and again, recreational drugs don't solve anything, but you can maybe learn something, whether that's through ego death or putting your life into perspective by taking a step out of it. And you can accomplish the same thing by just going to a rooftop bar and just observing the world from the 50th floor and just say, all my problems are there. and you escape that way. You have a nice martini, and really,
yeah.
But maybe it's because I can compare it to doing psychedelics in the past.
We're talking about psychedelics, and then let's talk now also about recreational drugs in general. So like opiates.
Do you guys mind if I go to the bathroom real quick, because this cough is so please continue with that. Sorry.
Leo, you can tell me about the Dulaglutide you've been using while we're waiting.
Dulaglutide.
We already know Steve's experience with the GLPs, but now yours.
Exactly. Well, I wanted to follow Steve's advice and get the short-acting one, because obviously it makes much more sense. The short-acting one should have less side effects. But as you know, I had to negotiate with the nurse. So the nurse, the nurse informed me that she was very well educated in endocrinology, and she had specialized it in nursing school. So she told me actually that my previous medication, which was the one Steve took, was actually inferior, and there was a 1 week long one which was way superior, and I should take that one. So I agreed, of course. I don't want to protest. So I got the medication, and they immediately gave me 5 pens. By the way, they were so helpful. They were like, listen, if your insurance doesn't approve it, we're going to prescribe you 1 Lantus pen. Don't take it. Just get it prescribed, and we'll say you had a bad reaction. So they're really nice. Anyway, I got the Trulicity, and I've been taking it for, I stopped taking it. I had to stop. Let me tell you what happened. So I started taking it. First of all, totally inhibited hunger. It was quite extreme. And it was not as bad as Steve said in terms of, or Steve thought it might be in terms of the like having too much nausea the first 2 days, and then it wasn't too bad. Maybe it's because I'm overly hungry, so I didn't feel it. Maybe.
How would you compare it to? Have you ever had like melanotan 2 appetite suppression?
Yeah. I'm gonna talk to you about it. Yeah, I'll compare it. Melatonin is a great comparison. Also, we could talk about that real quick. So we could. So compared to melanotan, it's far superior. Compared to it's superior to any appetite suppressant I've ever tried.
Awesome.
It's one of the most interesting drugs I've ever tried in my life. I think it's, I assume, going to change bodybuilding and change fitness and change weight loss.
How the fuck people don't know about it yet? Crazy.
Steve changed our lives. I actually sat and I told my wife, Steve found something so incredible, and I don't even know how I never came across it. I look through diabetes stuff all the time.
Are we still talking about LSD?
No, we're talking.
That was an easy one. No, it's semaglutide, right?
Yeah. So you changed our lives. Look, so what I was saying, life changing. And so I took it. It wasn't too bad nausea for me the first couple of days because maybe I'm overly hungry. I don't know what it was, or maybe it's not as bad as we thought. More even, like she said. But anyway, I took it, and then immediately. By the way, I've been mentioning this, but recently I've been consuming a little bit of cannabis. I don't know why, but anyway, the point is, so there's some cannabis floating about. So the point is,
ego death in the process.
I don't know. Yeah, I needed to kill the ego. That's the problem. Yeah. So the point is, I had the Trulicity, and I happened to be going to like a little party thing that the next evening. So actually, it was the same day. So actually, it's a pretty legendary. I went to the CVS. I got the Trulicity. I injected in the car. I was like, damn, I'm so excited. I had to inject in the car. I've never done that in my life. And then immediately, 2 hours went by, and I had the party actually that night, not the next day. So 2 hours went by, and I was like, damn, it's weird. I'm really not hungry. So I had some marijuana around, and I was going to this party, and people drink that. I don't drink. So I was like, I'll take some. I usually don't drink. So I said, I'll take some marijuana with me and see if it inhibits the hunger, because I don't have much of a tolerance to marijuana. So now the hunger from cannabis for me is insane. So I took the cannabis, zero hunger. Dude, 6 hours went by. I smoked like a couple of bowls. I actually smoked it. I didn't even eat it. No hunger. Next day, I didn't eat that night. I went to sleep. The next day, I was like, this is crazy. So the next morning, I took MK677. Again, nothing. No hunger. Wow. MK677 inhibited. Then, I don't know which day it was, but within the next 2 or 3 days, I took a day off from the MK and the weed, but I was on the thing still. And then I took both at the same time. Again, didn't work. Didn't get hungry, still. Okay, but I noticed one thing. I'll tell you the truth. So if I kept smoking marijuana, I was smoking concentrate, very strong stuff. If I kept doing it for like 6-7 hours or something like that, then I could get hungry at the end of it. But it was really hard. The only reason I'm trying to get into so much detail with you guys is to explain how incredibly powerful this is. For me in my life, there has never been, from my biology, an appetite stimulant stronger than marijuana. I've tried everything. There's nothing for me like marijuana, like a good indica, kush, from California where I live. That thing will make me, I'll eat everything. I could eat 30 donuts. This thing inhibited that totally. No hunger, no problem.
Quick question. Quick question, Martin. Did you experience hypoglycemia? Because I do know that marijuana alters your blood sugar levels a little bit, and this semaglutide also alters your blood sugar levels. So did you feel at any point hypoglycememia?
No, I didn't. Still, right? I don't know why. I didn't. Probably because
he was using a Dulaglutide, by the way, not Sema.
Oh, so. Yeah, sorry, my bad. Yeah, Dulaglutide.
No, but still, you would think that it would. I don't know. No, probably because my cortisol is so powerful, I start burning stuff. I don't know. But anyway, so the final thing I wanted to mention, one interesting note though. By the 5th or 6th day, one night I couldn't sleep, so I took 100 milligrams of Seroquel, and this shocking event. Totally. That day I didn't do anything. There was no cannabis or MK or nothing. My hunger was 0. I was going to bed. I had already eaten, actually. And then I took this 100 milligrams of Seroquel, and the freaking GLP-1 agonist was totally inhibited 0. It went away completely. All my hunger came back from the whole 5 days of the week, even though I don't normally get hungry from Seroquel. I was so hungry. I ordered food. I ordered from 2 places at the same time. And I have food in the house.
But
it was like a crazy...
Day, right?
Dude, this is not exaggerated. This was a crazy week. I had I experimented with it. It went crazy. Some days no hunger. Some days I ordered 3 things. I couldn't control myself. And so, that only happened from the Seroquel. So I did some research. There's one paper that mentions that quetiapine and Seroquel may inhibit. There's some mechanism by which it may inhibit GLP-1 agonism. So I didn't know that. So it turns out if you ever get too upset with your GLP-1 agonist, you take 50 milligrams or 100 milligrams of Seroquel, it'll just inhibit it completely. That's for the next few hours. For the next few hours, they'll be back tomorrow. Yeah.
Because so what I noticed when I took the Dulaglutide, I would be a little bit more nauseous on the first 2 days, and then my appetite would come back on the 5th day. So I'd find it hard to manage. That's why I prefer the liraglutide, because it allows for daily administrations, and then I would do a lower dose at the beginning of the week and increase the dose at the end of the week as needed, and then skip 1 day to allow a refeed, because otherwise I don't want to eat anything, right? No, but it's a very potent and powerful appetite suppressant that doesn't mess with your central nervous system or blood pressure, vasoconstriction, and that kind of stuff. And it's the price. That's the issue, and availability.
Our price is good. We have good prices that we're getting from Turkey. They're quite good.
Yeah. But that's us 3.
Oh, no. Boston Lloyd's Forum. If anyone wants the prices, Boston Lloyd's Forum, you can go there and you'll get everything.
Everybody that doesn't live in America.
India has even cheaper prices. Yeah, even cheaper prices. But honestly, Derek, life-changing. I can't wait for you to try it.
Why it makes me even more excited too is Dulaglutide is inferior in all efficacy measures than semaglutide, and Sema is the one that I'm getting. So
unbelievable.
Looking forward to it.
So this lady was totally off then with what she was telling me.
Yeah, well, Dula definitely works, but Sema is the one that's super hyped up right now, is in all the articles about the next obesity killer, blah blah blah. And if you can literally Google Dulaglutide for semaglutide, and it clearly says in every single abstract conclusion, semaglutide beats Dulaglutide in glycemic control, obese reduction in weight, blah blah blah.
That's so. No, by the way, I meant to get her to switch me back, because obviously those who want a shorter acting drug, right? But
Sema is the superior. Sema is the superior long one. The short one is liraglutide. So she not only gave you a longer one, but she gave you an inferior long one.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Lira. Oh, wow. No way. So there's oh wow, I gotta okay. Anyway,
semaglutide is the most efficacious one on earth right now in terms of weight reduction, glycemic control, etc. Lira, the only thing it has going for it is the half-life, which is obviously something desired by all of us. But in overall efficacy measures, semaglutide is the fucking shit in GLPs.
So I can't imagine it being more powerful. Just FYI.
Maybe it's less nausea inducing for some people or something like that.
I'll try it next fast. I'll get a pen of semaglutide and give it a run, because I only tried the Dula, but it made me nauseous. So I was I wrote the semaglutide off.
If somebody can't lose weight with ephedrine combined with a GLP-1 agonist, there's just no excuse at all. Yeah. Because ephedrine, because of the epinephrine, epinephrine inhibits insulin, right? So it's nice to have that, because this is affecting the insulin a little bit. So it might be nice to have a stimulant with this, but this is zero hunger. And then if you have a
modafinil and the GLP-1, I did 6 weeks of productivity and I fucking killed it, my business, and Yeah, only the last week I started to get a little bit cognitively impaired, but that's 6 weeks on no calories.
You know how many bodybuilders probably could get in better shape if they knew about this shit too?
Do you know how many messages I got on a daily basis after I talked about it? To the point I said, guys, where do I buy it? I said, I don't. You know, it depends on your location. Go look online or get a prescription. But it's
maybe some of them are insulin resistant enough that they could get it prescribed. You don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, go on MK677 for a week, and then
anyone in America can get it prescribed. Anyone in America can get it prescribed, whether you're diabetic or not. You just need to know how to deal with people. So everyone you
just have to finagle the shit out of the system. Like
you just put $100 underneath your note, and then it's like,
well, thank God I'm not in Canada, because I can't finagle that thing at all.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with that. Canada and the UK are hard to finagle, that's for sure, or finagle, whatever that is.
In the UK you can buy it. There's a couple sites that sell it because the UK underground scene is pretty extensive. There's a couple of websites that sell it in the UK, and they ship to Europe also. I get a lot of DMs about this now, to the point I can't answer everybody anymore. But it's a very profound, and I heard it from some of my wife's clients, and they're talking about this slim pin. What the hell is that? So I looked on it, and then Derek, you mentioned about that article, and now in the meantime I was running the Liraglutide already. So it's of course I want to try it for myself before I start talking about it. So that's why this mescaline. Or mescaline? No, that's something else.
All right, let's talk about that. So we could talk about, but should we really quickly? I just want to finish about the addiction. I just want to mention that the idea that I also came to a conclusion through my life of trying these things, and I was actually studying happiness in grad school formally at some point. I was accepted to do a PhD in happiness research. So I was like obsessed with how can I live the happiest life possible, right? So at some point, I actually started to think that the best way to live a happy life was to be secure financially and to literally have as much happiness in the moment, hedonic pleasure, cumulatively over your life. I thought happiness is a cumulative summation of your hedonism through time. So little did I realize that every time you go and do something hedonistic, including music, including sex, including everything else, you are on what's called a hedonic treadmill, which is what we called it in grad school. Hedonic treadmill being every time you get a little bit more happiness, it's harder to get a bit more happy from that.
You need to raise the bar.
So what I realized at some point was to pursue my own happiness was not really to go party with some friends and have some memorable moments. I have tons of memorable moments, bro. They don't make me happy. I can think about them. I get nostalgic. I don't get happy. I miss the days. I'm like, oh yeah, those are good. But it's not like I'm sitting, walking around. I'm like, oh, remember that time I went clubbing and did this and that? No, or that time I traveled with these friends. And you don't live happily because of that. So what I realized was pursuing memories and pursuing hedonic pleasure didn't add much to my well-being. But my well-being came from like family, ethics, long-term friendships, living for meaning. Like these things made me actually happy. Whereas like I can go get really happy if I go do some drug or something like that, or party or whatever, hedonistic, or have an orgy or whatever. But it won't mean much for me 2 days later. Yeah, I can't do that obviously now. But what I mean is 2 days later, I won't be that much happier. It won't really affect me.
I think it was like there's this thing that I always bring up as an example of the hedonic treadmill or whatever it's called is this clip I saw on the Joe Rogan podcast like years ago. It was do you know who Dan Bilzerian is?
Yeah. He was running on that thing.
Yeah, so if you guys know his
jogging on the treadmill.
He was like, a rich guy at a young age and had everything, set up for him, where he just had, ridiculous extravagant parties, traveling, blah, blah, blah. And he said to Joe that when he was a teenager, getting a Ford Mustang would have put him like happiness level wise. It was like his dream car, and a Mustang is like, relative to an actual like supercar or something it's like an affordable, nice car, I guess, is how I would put it. And he says when he's a teenager, that car would have put him at like a 10 out of 10 in happiness. But then as he progresses and he starts exposing himself to the finer things in life at like a hyper accelerated speed, he starts thinking that like, oh, now I get like a Ferrari as a gift. And I'm like, I don't even fucking care. He has like a personal chef. He has this, he goes traveling. And that's like the stuff he needs just to be at baseline now. And anything worse than that, his life is like terrible. Yeah. So his hedonic treadmill is like, you're just fucking like full blown like 10 out of 10 speed, and like the littlest thing in your life goes wrong and it's like all crashed around you. So it almost makes you feel that you should almost like spread out your success and enjoy it. It's kind of like
exactly.
It's almost like what I gathered from it from somebody who's very goal oriented in a not materialistic aspect, but I do very much look at financial metrics as a way of gauging success. So for me, I'm like, I'm not saying I'm like trying to work slower, but I'm like trying to like be far more aware of the progress as it's going, rather than just like, I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, but it seems
try this, because everybody does their financials at the end of the month, right? Take a 2-day break before you do your financials.
Why?
Because then, like normally, you're working your way up to your finance, and you know how it's going to end up, right? And it's like a race to that end of the month statement where I did better than the month previous by X amount of %, right? So my business is growing. Now, if you take a little break, even if you
Derek's problem is he's looking at the computer every 5 minutes. It's not even about that.
I try to make it clear to him.
Like, wait a minute.
You know,
dude, like, YouTube views too. Another great example of the hedonic treadmill. Like, whereas when let's say a year ago, I would have been like, a video gets 10,000 views, I would have been like, that's pretty fucking good. Now, if I get less than 80, 90,000 views on a video, I'm like, what did I do wrong? Like, I fucked up today. I have to find something way more viral than this. And that's like a terrible, shitty mindset to get into if it's like your entire like. It's not like I'm very aware of it though, which is good, but at the same time, you really fall into that hedonic trap of being like something that 5 years ago you would have been like, there's no fucking way I'm ever going to be at this level, but now it's your baseline. So anything worse than that, you're like, life sucks right now. And
that's why you need to take a step back sometimes. That's why you need to take a step back and just kind of observe from a distance. But it's very difficult when you're on a roll and every day you contribute to your business and your success or your aspirations or your goals. Every day contributes. Like, I understand. Like, if I take a day for one break, you lose. You're basically losing financials and your full steam going ahead with your business. But sometimes it's required to get some sort of satisfaction out of it, because you're not even living in the moment anymore.
Yeah, but so let's look at some things from evidence. So we know that in happiness research, people who win lottery, their happiness, I'm not talking about their money, but their happiness. Everyone says they lose their money in 2 years. That's true. Well, it's actually convenient. That's the same time frame. But they gain the money. Their happiness above baseline shoots up. So out of 10, they say their happiness level used to be 6. Now it's 9. And it stays like that, and it slowly declines for about 2 years and returns to baseline. If somebody loses their legs, becomes a paraplegic, they go down below baseline for about 2 years, then they return to baseline. Wow. If somebody gets divorced, they go down below baseline almost as much as a paraplegic. And then they go back about 2 to 3 years, then they stay below baseline and on average never return back to baseline. So there are certain events in life that change you. And then there are certain events that you adapt, both upwards and downwards. And the theory of how you adapt to it is by salience. So when you're used to things around you, they don't surprise you. And whatever is salient to you, so Derek, what's salient to you now is this is unusually low. Before, you weren't getting a video that was 50 views. If you did, you would feel the same way as you do now. It's really about the salience of everything, right?
Yeah.
That's why it's good to take a step back sometimes, but it's hard.
It seems insane, but like the happiness level, like the Dan Bilzerian thing, like as far as how relevant it is to where I'm at, it's definitely true. Because for me, my happiness level on a video getting 100,000 views now is the same exact happiness level as I used to get on 5,000 to 10,000 views not that long ago. So me getting like 1,000 subscribers equates to now like 10,000 in the same time frame, but the exact same level of happiness equation. So
I haven't actually seen, I haven't talked to people about this that made a lot of money myself. So I've never heard people talk about it. But what I have noticed is that because we're talking about views now, but we're also talking about career, right? So what I have noticed though, is that everybody I've ever met that was extremely successful didn't enjoy their wealth much. Like I've never met anybody like all those basketball players and that stuff. Everybody I know that was like that went broke. They all go broke eventually, like Mike Tyson. They all eventually go broke. Like that's an extreme example.
It's the overcompensation and spending more than you earn. You know.
Yeah, to some degree. Like it doesn't seem obvious. Like right now, you wouldn't think, oh, Kanye could go broke one day. But if you check out the rock stars from the 70s, there's a bunch of them that you would have never thought were broke, and they are broke now. Yeah. Like it eventually, you can't just live for the result. You got to live for the process. Otherwise, the result will be fleeting.
Yeah, it's really hard to live for the process though until after you finish, like you beat a video game, for example, and then you're like, "Well, I'm done now."
Yeah, but if you do that, then okay. So I'm not going to try to give you advice because obviously you may be different than me and everything like that. But my theory is this: I think that if you're living in that kind of way where the video game itself isn't fun, you just want to beat it, then you're gonna have to eventually become hedonistic or do things like that. And I don't think there has to be some element of the process where you create it in such a way. Like right now, maybe, for example, just to be realistic, you're pressured by the idea of having to make 2 videos a day. I bet you if you're making 1 video a day, you'd be less pressured by time and you'd actually enjoy the process a little bit more. Like things, just small things like that. Or for example,
We say that as I'm about to clip like 30 fucking videos out of this exact podcast.
No, but really, so I don't know what it would be because obviously you're doing what you love. It must just be the process of how you're doing it that's making you want to.
I do love
rush
what I'm building towards
it's the journey.
too. Yeah, I'm trying to be like very cognizant of the journey, and it's like sometimes hard though because the days, they blur into each other so much when you're doing like this much shit. And then you'll be like, holy hell, it's been like 6 months and I don't really even remember the process. No. Like you're not really living through it. You're just kind of like full steam ahead, blurring through it.
Okay. So again, take a step back and observe from a distance and appreciate what you've accomplished. And you can do that every month. And then you close it off with your. I know it's very hard, but
you can't just consciously just. Okay, it's like telling someone.
But you just have to learn how to do it. I mean, I do it. I do it every month. I take a little step back and I observe what's going on, and not only the financials in the business.
You have the mindset. You have a different mindset from those.
It takes a while. Yeah, it takes a while. It's something you have to learn. And then you appreciate what you have, and instead of going full steam ahead, okay, maybe it inhibits success to a certain extent, but how much money do you really need?
It's not about money; it's about success. But
we all reach financial success at one point, right? And then what can you do? You can raise the bar. You go from 1 million to 10 million to 100 million to $1 billion.
No, he wants to change the world. He wants to change the world, and really, that's what we all want to do. We want to change the world for in a better way, in a little bit, and we want to leave our mark a bit. But what I was saying is this, though, Derek. You might not be noticing it, but I tell you something. I've only known you for like a year or something like that now. But I've been watching you, and Lucy's been watching you, and Steve's been watching you, and we've seen your. It's been incredible to watch you, and also, to be honest, you raised us up with you as well. And just to see the dramatic change. Remember the time a year and a half ago when I heard about you, originally I was like, who's this channel? I didn't know anything about it. I opened the channel. I'm like, this is the best quality information I've ever seen on steroids in the discussion ever. And to go from, you had 150 at the time, I think, when I first saw your channel, or 200, less than that. Something like that. It was quite low.
April 1st last year, I hit 100.
Yes. It was quite low. So then from there to now, it's incredible, brother. Yeah. So even if you don't take account of it, you should hear us or other of your friends say it. So you notice you're on your way, you're making progress, and it's from your hard work. It's not by luck or anything like that. And it's because you deserve it. And you're leaving. I'm not just saying this because you're my friend, but genuinely, you're leaving the world a better place a little bit. Like even these videos you made on the recent ones, the Chef Raj show on Jordan Peters. Those things minorly but hugely educate people. If I had those things when I was 17, my knowledge would be way different now. So I can only imagine the next generation that grows up with your videos, who I get consultations with all the time, and I'm so impressed by these individuals. They're so astute and technically adept because of them. So enjoy it.
It's very, very, very valuable content. And you're the biggest guy out there right now that is doing this kind of information, and we're kind of following in your footsteps. But
he's raising the bar also.
Yeah, I was raising the bar, but of course, there's a lot of knowledgeable people out there, but nobody has the desire to really put the information forward. again, putting it all behind paywalls. And I was the same guy, with this Facebook group. And then I had a discussion with Derek, and he's like, just put it out there on YouTube. And, everything he said came to fruition, so
it's true. But we have to give Derek credit for one thing, though. He's the first person ever to review studies properly in this subject area and discuss it, more than one study, and discuss receptors and molecular mechanisms. I was shocked when I first saw the channel by how the quality level, how it set the bar up. So anyway, yeah. I just wanted to compliment you a little bit. You should be very proud of yourself, and like he said, you should take a break if you can. I don't know how you're gonna do it, but take a break and look back.
I'll roll out the carpet for you if you ever make a trip here. I'll give you a life-changing experience. It's really not in a hedonistic way, but like Derek, which countries have you visited so far? Besides Canada, and the States,
the U.S., Germany, and I think that's it.
Okay, Asia is a completely different planet sometimes. And if you really take the time to go somewhere like Bhutan, Mongolia, Tibet, I know it's so far beyond what you're trying to accomplish, but it's you get experiences in life that you can never get anywhere else. And unfortunately, you have to get out of your comfort zone a little bit to experience new things. And it might mean that maybe it's better to reach all your goals first and then do that. But then again, goals, like with everybody, we all raise our goals every month anyway. So we'll never attain what we really want because we keep raising the bar for ourselves.
Yeah, that is true.
That is, and that makes it very, very, because I thought, I'll be happy with 25,000 subs. And I'm there, and I'm like, okay, 100. No, 100K, I just want to keep going, right? 100K, right?
Yeah. And I'm very happy. I am actually, honestly, I'm very happy.
But I've done so much stuff in my life already that I wanted to get out. Like for me, the only thing I really want to accomplish is kids. So I'm very happy for you, Leo, that you're already on this path.
I picked a name.
Wow.
I can't tell you. I'll tell you guys privately. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
The wife has to fully approve before I can say yeah.
Okay, right. But there's always goals in life, right? And you have financial goals and intellectual goals and partner goals. And Derek, hopefully at one point you'll get that partner goal as well. I'm sure you're still sampling. But researching, right. And you'll reach all these goals, but then you should also accept and be happy with that goal. And that's very difficult. That's probably the most difficult, when you attain a goal and you just in the moment, you revel in it and you enjoy it. Not to a point that it's hedonistic, but do you actually reflect back on what it took to get there and just appreciate what you've built. And it's very, very hard. I know.
So I have one suggestion, Derek. There's a book called, I think it's called Flourishing or Happiness by Martin Seligman. Martin Seligman is a professor from Harvard who developed this concept in happiness economics called the concept of flourishing, which we observe in humans, but we don't know exactly what it is. It's a complex thing where somebody does something they love doing. Like, for example, say you love knitting. So you like to knit. So you find a job in which you knit, and then you find a job in which you knit, and over time you have a long-term goal. I want to create a large knitting company. And you have many goals along the way, and you actually enjoy knitting as well as the management of the employees. So you find a career that you enjoy the process, you have many goals, and you have a long-term goal. You should never reach your long-term goal. That's not the point. If you ever get there, you will feel horrible. Your goal is actually to be moving along between the spots, enjoying the process, and the process of flourishing is when you get the recognition of the success. As you succeed and you keep enjoying the process, people experience this overwhelming glow and happiness in their lives. It comes when you find the right niche, the process, the goal.
Yeah. It sounds exactly like what I was thinking earlier, where I said you like have something, but you like drag it way out, like all throughout your life, and then you enjoy the full thing, but you never actually really get there.
Yeah, and then there are many goals that you exactly. That's sort of exactly that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about this this MK677 alternative. What's it called? Macimorelin. So Derek, you're telling us that the FDA approved Macimorelin for the diagnosis of growth hormone deficiency.
Yeah, I actually had no insight on it other than what I just sent you. So I was under the impression that it was a secretagogue meant for growth hormone deficiency, but it turns out you read far more closely than I did that it's used in the diagnosis of adult GH deficiency. So how would that differ? Like we have, it's a synthetic secretagogue still, so you would think it would replicate sort of the same effect you're getting from ibutamoren or any of these other, Morelin extended things, ipamorelin, etc. So obviously you know more than I do, so me talking is kind of pointless right now. So I'll just let you go.
No, I did some quick research. What I discovered is that, it does have the same pharmacologic kind of profile. It's a small molecule growth hormone secretagogue agonist. It's been approved for the diagnosis of growth hormone deficiency. What does that mean? People have low amounts of growth hormone. They want to know, does their brain work? So they take the growth hormone secretagogue to see if the pituitary responds to it.
Right.
So to know the hypothalamus is the actual problem. That's the whole point of it. So you do one diagnosis, you give them the growth hormone secretagogue. If their growth hormone levels, you test it an hour later, the FDA actually approved a certain number. If it's below that number, I think it's 2.6 or whatever, something like that, you have growth hormone deficiency. You can be given growth hormone legally and stuff like that. So it was first approved for that recently. It's in trial right now as a treatment for growth hormone deficiency among children, as a treatment, just like you said. It's also for that. And it's being researched also for the treatment of cancer one of the symptoms of kinds of cancers. So those two trials, they're phase 2 trials, they're in the process right now. So yeah, you're totally right. The interesting thing is this though. I originally thought it was because it had a shorter half-life. So not half-life, but it has a peak plasma levels in 1 hour, and it's the GH levels decline within 3 hours. The peak GH levels are within 1 hour. Whereas with ibutamoren, which is the MK677, the peak is in 2 hours. Oh wait, the peak is in.
Good luck getting this accurate because I
know I've went through it hard. I know. So I'll explain why. So the peak is in 2 hours, but it remains elevated for 6 hours. But this is in beagles. That's the problem. All the studies on MK677's half-life and peak plasma times are on animals, but the human ones are actually long-acting, and you can see the amount of GH and IGF-1. I'm not sure if there's a paper I'm missing, but I couldn't find one with actual human levels. So I don't actually know if it's faster acting or not. And I want to be clear, I do not know why MK677 was discontinued exactly, because MK677 was being researched for human body recomposition. There was 2-year trials. I don't really know why it wasn't approved, but this one was approved for just this test of growth hormone deficiency, because you'd think that MK677 could have tested for that too. It would have just taken 3 hours instead of 1 hour, if that's actually the case of the pharmacokinetics. So I don't really know. It could be the case that this is a pharmaceutical thing. One pharma company didn't succeed in their applications and another one did, and it could just be that. I couldn't find. You would think, Steve, that there would be a paper comparing the two, right? If they were going to prove it, there's zero. So that doesn't make sense to me.
You might just be looking at the wrong pipeline, because it was acquired by a company called Loomis Pharma in 2018, and the drug is not called MK677 anymore. It's called LUM201.
Oh, so they're publishing about it but still, it's not.
Here, I'll send you it right now. It's still in preclinical, or it's in phase 2 right now. I'll send you the actual updated pipeline over chat.
Wait, you're saying that MK677 is still being...
Yeah, check this out.
Okay.
So the other two growth hormone secretagogues that work through the ghrelin receptor, I think they were not approved in clinical trials because of the documentation or the methods of analysis during clinical trials were not sound. So maybe the drug is still sound, but what I found is that a couple other compounds were just simply not documented correctly, or the clinical trials were not performed correctly, and that's why it was rejected.
Yeah. The half-life, by the way, this is why, I think I have, at least from what I understand, the most elaborate and heaviest dug into articles on all of these SARMs and or related compounds. And this is the kind of stuff you see in my articles. You'll find out the actual names of these drugs, where they're at in the pipelines. You're not going to find it by typing in the chemical name or the original brand name. Oh. And as far as I know, the half-life in humans, when I actually looked it up by one of these random I found it by looking up a really weird, like old version of the name, and it's 4.7 hours for the elimination half-life with IGF-1 levels remaining elevated with a single oral dose for up to 24 hours.
Oh, there we go. So it is definitely way longer acting.
Yeah.
Okay, but by the way, Derek, just so you know, I don't remember the brand that did have MK, but it was a big pharma company. I remember, and they had several of them. So if they sold that molecule, I wonder why. It's interesting to sell it to a smaller company like this.
Right. Yeah,
because it was one of the big ones like Pfizer or something like that.
Yeah, anyways, some of these compounds trade hands a lot. It seems like unless you're GTX, it seems like even like the LGDs, I'm pretty sure they traded hands a couple times. It went from like Ligand to Viking to like the drug's name now is VK5201 instead of LGD4033.
So with that said, there's a couple of other notes I noticed. So one about Macimorelin. The difference is this: there's no evidence of it increasing cortisol, even in the extended studies, which were 2 months or 2 weeks long. It increased prolactin, just like MK677, but didn't increase cortisol, which I don't really know why. And it was interesting because one of the tests that test that acutely was trying to figure out if Macimorelin could be a test of cortisol also function for people that have cortisol insufficiency or adrenocorticosteroid insufficiency. So they tried it, and there's no response in cortisol. So it's interesting that I don't know how that works, because you think that the ghrelin is supposed to cause cortisol, because ghrelin is part of the sympathetic nervous system. Like when people become, in rodent studies, when they give them what's called chronic unpredictable stress, like random stressful environments, like the light comes on randomly through the day, their ghrelin will increase, no matter how much they're fed. So it's and ghrelin increases dopamine and adrenaline. So it's part of the sympathetic nervous system. I don't know why it doesn't do that. The other thing that Macimorelin was shown to do is to increase the QT interval, but minorly. So to the extent that if somebody had a heart condition, they would be concerned, or if they were taking something like an SSRI that extends the QT interval or something else like that, they would also be concerned. And that's really. Oh, there was also no evidence. There's no studies so far about insulin sensitivity that are published.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because it's reasonably shorter active life and no effects on cortisol, and being used, for the insulin. What was it called? The insulin response. It might be a suitable alternative to MK6, but it's very early to say right now. And I tried to see if I could find it somewhere, but no luck so far.
No, there's none. But you're totally right. I mean, that's what I would think too. I would think bodybuilders, if they wanted to use a growth hormone secretagogue, instead of getting that cortisol day, which will make you more sensitive to estradiol and make you suppress your gonads more from estradiol, which we should discuss also at some point. You would take this, like if you wanted growth hormone right after your workout to be exaggerated, to make sure you always get your growth hormone after your workout. Sounds like a good choice.
Pre-workouts, and you get hungry post-workout.
Yeah.
But then again, it's very early on to say, and if it's not really being sourced, then maybe a few years from now, But if it passed clinical trials and it is FDA approved, I didn't see it in the US database though.
Hey guys, I just noticed
like a couple of days ago or something.
Okay.
Is there some feedback on the audio, by the way? Like I was just noticing hearing myself like a little bit.
I'm on the headphones.
Okay, just double checking.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were saying.
Wow, I was just saying, I noticed we've been 3 hours, by the way.
Yeah. I'm surprised you didn't say like, hey, I need to go to bed yet.
No, I just realized. Okay, no, because I had to be awake for you. I had to drink coffee, but I think we were probably exhausted. There's still a lot of topics to discuss, so I think maybe we leave them next time.
We should save it. Yeah.
Sure.
Or do you want to continue? We could continue, but I feel like you guys.
I'm good for another 30 minutes. And then
I could be good. I get more clips, and I'm already here, so it's up to you guys.
Let's do it. Right. Let's do it. So
let's go.
Let's talk about. We talked about appetite. Let's talk. Well, do you guys want to? We could discuss cognition or androgens. Like, should we tell us, Steve? What have you discovered about progesterone being in? Because let's just tell the audience the background why we want to discuss this. So Derek and Steve and I have been following androgen literature for years and years, and historically, we were only told about estrogen being a negative feedback indicator to the brain. The brain then signals to your balls to produce testosterone, and the testosterone converts to estrogen, and then the estrogen signals back to your brain to tell you to stop producing so much testosterone. But actually, the first time we talked about it together was Steve brought it up to me in one of the first episodes before Derek joined, which was he was saying, how Trenbolone and these kind of things shut people off even more. And Steve was saying it's probably because of you were saying it was the androgenic nature. And I was thinking it's the progesterone.
Yeah,
progesterone
it's also the progesterone. Yes.
Yeah,
basically a combination of both.
we mentioned both of them, but at the time we didn't really know much about it, so we looked into it. So, Steve, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about progesterone, how that's a negative feedback signal?
So, progesterone at superphysiological concentrations or anything that agonizes the progesterone receptor can also have a negative feedback on your luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone production. Now, of course, you'll increase collagen synthesis through an extra pathway, but since the clearance time is so much longer with the Trenbolone and the Nandrolone and the Mint, you get HPTA suppression for much longer, and that's one of the problems. Now, of course, your natural progesterone production is probably bottomed out unless you're using ACG on cycle, which is usually no longer effective with the progestogenic compound. You still experience testicular atrophy on Nandrolone, Trenbolone, Trestolone. Maybe at lower doses of Nandrolone you can get away with it, but any dose of Tren, any dose of Trestolone, you will experience testicular atrophy no matter how much ACG you use.
If you're not using FSH, I wonder if you're using FSH, it might not happen. Honestly.
I saw it on HMG also.
At high dose, 75 units?
75 units, yeah.
You still, really? I wonder. I've never tried it, obviously.
But yeah. This is a Trenbolone, right? So maybe not a Nandrolone, but a Trenbolone. I've had guys that did the HMG, testicular function protocol, right? 75 IUs every other day or 3 times a week. And they go on 225 milligrams of Trenbolone and gone.
So also we should mention to the audience, this is so striking that nobody ever mentioned this before, because the actual drugs used to castrate men are progesterone-related drugs.
Yeah, and if you try to do it with just an androgen or even a SARM or anything, unsuccessful. You have to combine, even there was this drug called S23. It's a SARM, and it's literally designed to shut you hard down. That was what it was designed for, but its chemical structure is a non-steroidal androgen receptor modulator, so a SARM, but in actual clinical terms, it's
male contraceptives are progesterone based, or they're synthetic progestins to increase the bioavailability. That's why there's synthetic progesterones in birth control. Not
the crazy thing about the S23 is, so it's an AR agonist combined with estrogen. I believe it was not successful in causing castration. They had to add progestin on top to achieve castration. So that's even with estrogen in the equation. I might be wrong on that. I might have to double check my article.
Derek, when you just mentioned this, you were talking about progesterone acetate in your video. Progesterone acetate
that
is
was
my favorite progestogen, by the way. That's the only progestogen, by the way, Derek, that's not associated with cancers.
That's the one that is the male contraceptive now.
I've been trying to get it without the damn progestogen in it, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, without the
ethinyl estradiol.
Yeah, exactly. Without the estradiol.
You know what the weird thing is about progesterone, like conventional oral micronized progesterone? If you start taking that every day, your sex drive will go down and you get negative feedback on your HPTA. But if you use 5 milligrams intermittently, like what you said in the libido article, like once or twice a week, your libido goes up. And there's studies to prove that with daily progesterone administration, rats, obviously, they have no sexual incentive. But if they used micronose at a low point to bring them somewhere at a superphysiological or a physiological concentration, their sex drive and initiation of sex went up. And I can vouch for that because on, what is it called? Olive Lenore, one of your that guy. So he reached out to me to help with this non-alcoholic fatty liver disease in a suggestion to use micronized progesterone to help cholesterol transfer across the cell membrane out of some of the cells.
He's a patient care coordinator for my
highly knowledgeable,
clinic, by the way.
Highly knowledgeable. Yeah. So I was very thankful. So I incorporated micronized progesterone intermittently. I the bodybuilder in me was like, okay, I'm going to use it every day. And then I immediately noticed sex drive went down. So I understood that that's not a sustainable approach. So I used it intermittently, 5 milligrams micronized, maybe twice a week. And, it's very hard to say if that was a contributing factor to resolving the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, but using it twice a week, my wife was very pleased. So,
Can I make a note about that? That's a little bit dangerous. So I experimented extensively with progesterone as well as GHB and as well as TSPO receptor agonists for the purpose of developing extremely potent sexual drive protocols for clients. Yeah. And they were very successful. However, along the way, I developed NAFLD again. And the reason why is that TSPO receptor agonism and upregulation of some of these neurosteroids appears to increase fatty deposits in the liver. And so there is some evidence of this. So I would be careful a little bit about the progesterone. I don't know if necessarily all of it will be affecting the TSPO receptor or converting into allopregnanolone, because obviously it's just progesterone. But if you were doing what I was doing, which was going to the GHB receptor in the brain to try to increase the sex drive, that definitely, I've noticed, increases fatty liver deposits. It happened to me. I read about it, and then I saw it happen to me. So I was
that was from the actual GHB?
It was from the combination of the GHB with the progesterone causing the upregulation of the neurosteroids in the brain and the TSPO receptor. And by the way, progesterone and this signaling can also increase inflammatory signaling in the body.
Yeah,
there's a lot of complicated.
Too many things to think of, dude.
Yeah, it's very complicated.
Think you've got it figured out, and then no.
But that's the fun part.
By the way, before we go on, I just have to correct myself because I said that S23 was administered with estradiol and a progestin to achieve infertility. No, it was just fine on its own with estradiol. So,
but they had to add estradiol.
Yeah, it was insufficient just on its own.
Yeah, so that's still significant. So but getting back to the point, yeah. So Steve was talking about progesterone. So then what I did a bunch of research, and I found what Steve said, progesterone very potent at doing it. And then I found out, of course, estradiol, of course. So what there is this. There's, just for the audience to know, remember there's 3 parts of this. There's the testicles, and then in the brain there's 2 parts. The beginning, which is the hypothalamus, and then the pituitary, which receives that signal, then signals to the gonads. Now so what's happening here is the hypothalamus has cells that produce something called gonadotropin-releasing hormone. Those cells are called gonadotropin-releasing hormone cells, or synthesizing cells. Those cells have receptors for estradiol. I found some like in detailed studies. They have receptors for estradiol. They have receptors for progesterone. They have receptors for androgens. So they do receive signals from androgens.
And glucocorticoid also, right?
They have, I think they may have receptors for glucocorticoids, but what I know about glucocorticoids is this. The glucocorticoid receptor agonism at the glucocorticoid receptor makes the hypothalamus more sensitive to estradiol signaling at the hypothalamus.
I think we all kind of like knew the answer, but didn't actually have the evidence really, because it's like, how could you take Anavar or something that's not a substrate for aromatase? Why would you get suppressed if it wasn't for AR agonism? It would make no sense.
Exactly. So we knew, but
either one or a combination of the progesterone, the estrogen receptor, or the androgen receptor, one or a combination is probably suppressive enough that it is. And that's how your, HPTA kind of, controls itself. One is too high. Okay, we're going to reduce the luteinizing hormone and the follicle stimulating hormone downstream by inhibiting gonadotropin releasing hormone, So it's and we're trying to bypass that, but it would still be advised to keep your HPTA somewhat active with, I'm going to try that next cycle. Try enclomiphene therapy and then Kisspeptin 10 and then gonadorelin or buserelin, the nasal spray if I can source it. I just want to see what is able to keep one part of the pathway active on hormone replacement. But I don't think so. I want to run the experiment, but I don't think anything will be successful.
Clomid may be superior pharmacologically to aromatase inhibitors. I know that, but it's the ocular damage for long-term use. Why not just use
enclomiphene, because it's, now we know that it's superior, but still,
the ocular damage is from all the SERMs. Minoxidil, from Nolvadex, from Nolvadex, from raloxifene, from all of them. They all have ocular damage. So I mean, why not just keep your estradiol in range and then...
the Clomid, as far as I know, why it's inferior is zuclomiphene is a mild agonist that has negative feedback properties. So the thing that I would imagine would be the ocular damage inducing component of it would be the N-clomiphene that antagonizes estrogen receptors. You would think.
Is that so? Then if that was the case, then
raloxifene... I know it's a far superior stereoisomer on its own for HPC.
No. I know what you mean, but what I'm saying is, if that was the case, then there would be isomer forms of the other SERMs that were not damaging that would also be superior, but we've never heard of them. So I assume that that's not the case, but who knows?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just saying that I would think a SERM in any capacity would be bad for your eyes. Is kind of like what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
Yeah, because it doesn't allow estrogen to come to the brain, and you're inhibiting the collagen synthesis.
I'll tell you something, guys. I got to tell you, if I was looking at it like you, Steve, to be honest with you, right now, as you guys know, I started taking androgens for the...
oh, dude, this is a huge clip. We got to talk about your 400 milligrams of test or whatever you're on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's supposed to be
400?
Well, so it was meant to be. I don't know. I don't trust it. So I say it's between 200, 100, and 400. But let me tell you what happened. So basically, I decided originally to take HCG and FSH, as you guys know, because I wanted to... My daughter's being born in 3 months, and I wanted some energy. And I've been off any androgens for 2.5 years completely. So it was like I had a child, whatever. So I was like, I could use a little bit for performance enhancement. So I took HCG and FSH, and then within 3 days, I took testosterone. I just injected one cc of the 400 milligram testosterone that I had around. So,
but you know better. This 400 milligrams per 1 milliliter, that's full with solvents.
No, it is a high solvent one. No, it is a high solvent one. I just happen to have it. No, it is very high solvent. I just happen to have it. But I mean, it's just one injection. But the thing is, so I injected it. I immediately was overwhelmed by androgens. It was too much. So I skipped. So I didn't inject for about 10 days, and then I injected again, and then I haven't injected since then because I've realized, this is what I was trying to get to, is that the FSH is so unbelievably stimulating that I think, Steve, if I was in your position and thinking about what I was going to do in my next cycle, if I could afford it, I would be looking at the FSH before anything else. This thing is so stimulating, that the combination, because now I'm getting very affordable FSH. So before I was using FSH during my recovery, but I could barely use it because I was like, this is too expensive. It's selfish for me to use it on myself and on my family, my wife and stuff like that. So I didn't want to spend that much, but now it's cheaper. So I've been using it quite a bit, and I had to just drop the testosterone out because I'm like, for the psychological effects, I'm already there. I don't need any more. I mean, I'm getting the full psychological effects. So it's been beautiful, honestly. But yeah, Derek, to answer your question, what I've noticed mainly so far is like, because remember, it's been 2.5 years. So I'm very sensitive.
Clarify for the audience, though, you're not doing it to get jacked. You're doing it for maybe give like a brief overview of why you're doing it.
Oh yeah, well, I'm having my wife's pregnant with my first child, and so
majorly for like stress resilience and like productivity and stuff.
For
like
productivity,
that, right?
Yeah, because my child's gonna be waking up all night. I'm not gonna be able to sleep well. I need the energy. I need to be able to be active and physically moving. Also, with my wife being pregnant, I've been like all day. I'm basically a mover now. I've been moving stuff all day, and I'm just constantly active. And then I have to go to the computer, research, and I don't get that much sleep, as you guys know. So I was basically trying to deal with that. So I started, I have a video, it's called like the testosterone for resilience or something like that. I noticed in my usage of testosterone in my life that what I thought was for me, a dose of around 300 to 400 milligrams, really 400 milligrams, gave me this kind of resilience in my personality. It comes from dopamine signaling, from adrenaline signaling, from the virility, from all these kind of things. And so I wanted that, but I realized basically what I was telling you guys is that my sensitivity declined so much that it's a lot for me, which I was surprised by. So I really only need the HCG and FSH, and the results have been great. I sleep the same amount, but I wake up like I used to with energy, vigor. It's really great. It's not life changing. It's not like, for example, an amphetamine or an SSRI or something like that, but it's quite significant. I mean, I've always really thought that since I've been researching so much about the brain the last 2 years, the test with an SSRI is like the perfect resilience stack for somebody because they work so well together. The testosterone reduces the serotonin in the body. Serotonin inhibits some of the adrenaline and dopamine, cools you down, but both of them give you different sides of resilience, where the testosterone gives you this can-do attitude and the serotonin gives you this kind of feeling of the world being all right. And so those two things together is just perfect for work. I mean,
I have none of those. Actually, it's getting better. After introducing the food again, my testosterone and libido went up. But I'll check it at the end of the month. But the most exciting thing that I'm doing right now is icing my testicles to keep. That's a clip in itself. But I'll do blood work at the end of the month, so I don't want to be presumptuous and say that it's working. But the only thing that I've noticed is that my sex drive has returned. But
tell us a bit. I used to ice, as you know, also for months. When I first stopped, I used to ice for months. And let's talk practically. How the hell are you doing it? Because I used to put these ice packs.
I work from home.
No, because really, but they fall out of the briefs. They get stuck in weird position. Like there are, if you go on Amazon, actual briefs you can buy where they have like slots for the actual ice
gel packs that you just wrap around.
But then also the other problem is this: if you want to be legit about it, every hour you got to get up and go get a new gel pack and switch it out. Otherwise,
I it the whole day. You crazy? 20 minutes 3 times per day. That's what I'm doing.
Oh yeah, that's probably
hot cold therapy. I'm not gonna ice it the whole day, man. I would be numb. I would be completely
What's the difference supposed to be in the studies? I haven't even looked.
I haven't even looked in the studies either, but a buddy of mine said that it was working, and he showed me his blood work. It went up by 20%. That was enough evidence for me.
It's free? It's free too, or it's total?
Total, just total. You only tested as total.
Oh, for test?
Yeah.
For testosterone?
His total testosterone went from like 700 to 900.
What were you icing your testicles for?
Sperm, bro.
That also,
improves your sperm function dramatically.
But I
guess it's like the same thing still, right? Basically, intratesticular testosterone, sperm. We're kind of talking about the same thing.
Yeah. No, but because potentially your sperm could be dying because of the heat. You could still produce testosterone, but your sperm could be dying, or your sperm might not have enough antioxidants to protect them from heat and all those other things. That's how the cold improves. Yeah. Huh. So I don't know. I mean, that's the thought. It definitely increases the sperm count tremendously. No, I never thought of doing it for testosterone. That's incredible.
Testosterone is more direct, than the fertility, because that takes 90 days, 120 days for really see a dramatic difference. So now it's been like 3 weeks. But my testosterone didn't decline any further from 515 before the fasting mimicking to 375, and then stayed there after 2 weeks of fasting mimicking. But now that I've been eating, I feel that my testosterone is higher. Physically.
I wonder if it's not the cold. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's that the cold makes them retract. Or so
I think it's like the same as when you're icing your elbow when you have inflammation, right? You send nutrients to the area.
Oxidative stress in the area also.
Right. You have a little bit of more blood flow because the testicles you have that vein that goes into it. So there's a little bit of a idea behind it that improves blood flow. And sends more nutrients, the same as you would do when you're icing your elbows or knees to reduce inflammation, and sends new nutrients to the area. So I'll do blood work at the end of the month, and everybody can expect before and after video. But physically, I feel that my testosterone is higher now and it's slightly higher, maybe 10% higher than it was a month after my PCT.
Incredible.
Yeah. So maybe it's 600, from 515 to 600. That's where I expected it to be. And if it's 550, that's still higher than my last reading, So let's see. It's cumbersome, but it's I feel noticeable effect.
Do you guys know anything? I know this is kind of like going way out in left field or whatever the saying is from what we're talking about right now. But I'm just thinking about another topic that's relevant to something we discussed recently is Gordon Ryan, the Brazilian jiu-jitsu phenom who had the gastrointestinal issues and who's getting a diagnosis, has an official diagnosis of gastroparesis, but he still has not tried fasting, and his diet, as far as I recall, is like, it's clean, but it's like chicken, rice, and like, shit like that. So like, obviously you guys are more gut experts than I am. Maybe thought you might have some feedback on the gastroparesis diagnosis and what would be like first line treatment.
What is the gastroparesis, Steve?
I don't know what it is.
Oh, really? Okay.
I have no idea what it is. Let's Google what it is. I'm curious just to know what the word means. No,
Very professional.
I thought Steve was checking it out. By the way,
I tried, man. I didn't have time. We started an hour earlier.
I wrote. Yeah, I thought it was.
It was like partial paralysis.
Yeah.
So he has like a backlog of food essentially.
So marijuana increases gastric emptying, by the way. Yeah, marijuana increases gastric emptying specifically. There are some drugs that increase gastric emptying. I'm sure there's certain drugs that do it. Who knows if that's the root cause of his problems or a symptom of it, though?
Maybe BPC 157 to increase, but it has to be injected quite locally. Damaged nerves and muscles that don't function with their normal strength.
But yeah, it may be true also. But yeah, Derek, this is a stomach issue. That's why we wouldn't know much about it, because it's just an isolated stomach issue. I assume.
Okay.
Yeah. But fasting, I remember reading his Instagram post, and he was afraid he was going to lose all his gains. A week of fasting you're not going to lose anything besides your health condition.
Okay.
So on the subject of experiments, so I've been running a very extreme experiment with pig brains recently.
Yeah.
It has been quite extreme. I haven't really told you guys about it, even privately.
How many milliliters are you up to now?
No, I've stopped. No, it's over. So I will tell you guys the conclusion of the experiment. Yeah. So to give the audience a bit of background, so there's growth factors in the body everywhere, and then there's growth factors in the brain. And the growth factors in the brain, it seems, when they're elevated, they provide an antidepressant and anxiolytic, meaning reducing anxiety effect. And it seems that a lot of antidepressants in psychiatry rely on this in order to treat depression and anxiety. The problem is a lot of those antidepressants cause sexual dysfunction. So because of this reason, and because I'm quite afraid of neurodegenerative disease, and I've been curious about how to increase the amount of growth factors I have in my brain to prevent dementia in the long term, because growth factors are also neuroprotective. They protect brain cells in the brain from death. And one hallmark of all dementias is a loss of cells in the brain. That's where you actually stop. So neurogenesis is a very interesting subject. So I in an effort to find compounds that could be neurogenic but not cause sexual dysfunction, I searched through a lot of research. I eventually came across only 2 drugs that are in production that are viable. One of them was Cerebrolysin. Cerebrolysin is purified pig brains, basically, and not brains in general, but specifically the purified growth factors of the brain. Specifically, nerve growth factor that Connor Murphy was looking for in the semen, as well as brain-derived neurotrophic factor, glial cell-derived neurotrophic factor, and really a lot of the growth factors you want. So this is given mostly in Eastern Europe for the treatment of acute brain injuries, traumatic brain injury, like what you'd get in a fight, or a stroke. So what they do usually in those studies is they inject 5 to 10 milliliters of cerebrolysin, which is water-based, into either muscle or the vasculature. And they do this over like 5 days in a row or a little bit longer while someone's in the hospital. And they do this only acutely. They never did it chronically. So what I did was I bought some from cosmicnootropic.com, where I now have a discount code called Leo, which I don't make money off of. I just buy my own cerebrolysin from there. So just so you guys to know. But anyway, you can use that discount code to get a cheaper one. But the point is, I bought some cerebrolysin for myself. They came in 2 milliliter ampules, 5 milliliter ampules, 10 milliliter ampules. I bought the 2 milliliter, well, actually, I originally bought the 5 milliliter ones, but it's a stupid idea. So if you buy a bigger one, just so you know, if you put it in a syringe and leave it in the fridge, it oxidizes and it does not work fully. It took me a long time to realize this, by the way. So just to save anyone that problem. So if you want to only inject 2 milliliters, you buy the 2 milliliter ampules. So eventually, what I would do is I would inject 2 milliliters every 3 days or 2 days, and I was able to replicate the effect of an SSRI, the actual feeling of an SSRI, months down the line. Because an SSRI takes 2 problems with it. It takes 6 to 7 months to work. So what happened to me specifically was I got off all of my medications when I chose to have a child, because I didn't want my epigenetics to be that affected. Of course, they can't totally reverse, but it's reverse a little bit of it. When I stopped and I decided to go back on the SSRI, well, it takes 3 months or so to work. So it was the perfect time for me to try the cerebrolysin. So that's when I started trying it, and it did work. But then an interesting thing happened. So there's a compound many of the audience probably knows about called ibogaine. Ibogaine is a unique compound that's psychoactive because it's the only compound ever known that can inhibit the withdrawals of a heroin addict. And it's not known how it does that. It's not clear. So I've used ibogaine before, historically, many times. And I wanted to research, beginning like 3 years ago. So I wanted to research, why did ibogaine actually cause these inhibition of withdrawals? So this is all before the Cerebrolysin experiment. A year ago or so, I found out that ibogaine, reading a recent paper, only at the flood dose. By the way, guys, ibogaine, when you take a low dose, a heroin addict, his withdrawals still come. Only at the flood dose, the huge mega doses, the withdrawal is totally inhibited. Well, when I read the research papers, I found out what? At the flood doses of ibogaine for rodents, it upregulated the BDNF protein, brain-derived neurotrophic factor protein, for weeks afterwards, whereas the normal dose didn't do that. So I said, wait a minute, is it neurogenesis? Then I forgot the issue. I had a client who was addicted to opiates. He used ibogaine. I gave him some advice about how to use it. He used it, got off opiates, had no withdrawal. Then he slipped up a couple of weeks later. But he had some Cerebrolysin on hand because I told him to use it after the ibogaine to keep his mood up and neurogenesis up. He was embarrassed to tell me that he screwed up with the ibogaine. So he went and took the Cerebrolysin on his own without asking me and took 50 milliliters of Cerebrolysin injected in 1 day. 50. Injected it all in himself and tried to quit again. 0 withdrawal. He discovered something unbelievable. Then, 2 weeks later, he slipped again. 2 weeks later, he injected this time as the protocols do in the studies. Because he spoke to me in between, and we talked about it. And he just on his own changed the thing. Did 5 milliliters 1 day, 5 milliliters the second day. Did it for 5 days. Cut down his opiate. Midway, half, totally out. And then midway, he's totally out of the opiates and had no withdrawal again. So I said, God damn, this guy changed the world. This is a shocking discovery. So then I started taking the mega doses of Cerebrolysin. 5 milliliters, 10 milliliters. Trying to see what is the effect. What does it feel like? Of course, I'm not addicted to opiates, but I need to know what is going on. And it is an overwhelming neurogenesis, something I've never felt before. It's like an SSRI after 8 months at the max dose, more than that. It's so much neurogenesis. By the way, guys, neurogenesis gives you brain fog when you have it. It's not like inflammation, but it also gives you brain fog. So it's so much neurogenesis that you could be trying to work and you can't even see the computer. That's what was happening to me. I couldn't see sometimes. I couldn't see sometimes. I had to go sleep for 12 hours, 14 hours, wake up feeling amazing. Amazing. I would tell you, like, if I went through a difficult, like I had a hard work month and I didn't recover well, instead of taking some growth hormone and recovering or marijuana, I would take some Cerebrolysin and rest and recover. 10 hours, sleep 10 hours. You wake up, maybe you'll have a bit of brain fog the next day, but the day after you feel so refreshed. And that's because of that actual growth in your body. Like when you take high dose growth hormone, you sleep deep.
Yeah.
It's similar to that feeling. It's similar to that, but it's in your brain.
So would it be feasible to do like 5 milliliters every Saturday if you have Sunday relaxing? You know,
extremely feasible. Extremely. That's what I'm talking about.
And
also, now I just want to mention some caveats. So just for people to understand, what is the concern with this? It's so powerful that it's not like an SSRI. So we know with SSRIs, they increase neurogenesis over 30 years. They don't cause brain cancers. But this hasn't been tested consistently for 30 years. And if you're using 5 milliliters, you're getting huge amounts of growth. So if you're prone to brain cancers, potentially you could get a brain cancer. Now, brain cancers are very rare. This is
usually
far less likely. Yeah. And far less likely than if you took 4 units of growth hormone that you would get melanoma or something like that. But still, it's just to mention there. I'm not that scared of it, as you can see, and I'm very scared of my health. But I just wanted to mention, to be ethical, that this could potentially happen. Who knows? It's never happened in the literature, but it could happen. And
other than feeling good. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So the last thing I wanted to mention is why I stopped using it right now is that if you use it too often, I believe that you develop antibodies to it. And so you have to take a break. You start to feel a little sick. Like it, because you can feel it. So you took 2 months. So I noticed this. It took me like 2 months of taking a lot, but.
So same as with the porcine insulin, you know, where you get some sort of autoimmune response. So I was wondering if you could use it intermittently just to kind of repair, basically, you know, and then maybe 5 milliliters once a week or every other week or something like that, because we're all under tremendous amount of workload. And people probably don't understand how much workload we're under. But
the 5 milliliters provides a lasting, it has like it stays with you, the effect, the neurogenesis for a few days. Yeah, so it's good.
Is it about a week or
3 days if it's one of them or something like that? So but it's enough. If you're doing it every week, your life will be better. It's that, and there's no sexual side effect.
Good.
It's clean. I don't know if you could do it every week without any inflammatory response, but you could certainly do it once a month for 3 days for sure.
Right. And that would be the time you kind of kick back and take a break from work because the brain fog would make you less productive.
Yeah, just that morning, exactly. But then you'll be so much more productive after. It's unbelievable.
Okay.
Honestly, of all the drugs I've ever used in my life, this has been one of the most valuable. So some of the most valuable ones, I mean, other than protective drugs like ARBs or something like that, the ones that changed my life in a very valuable way, I can see SSRIs did, amphetamines did, and with the restrictions of low dose and all that. Cerebrolysin, it didn't change my life because I was already benefited from it. But if I had this years ago, bro, oh my God, it could have. I had neurological damage. I mean, I used actual SSRIs, high dose, to actually cure neurological damage with a beta block. It worked. If I had cerebrolysin, I could have done it. And let's talk about bigger things. What about powerlifters who are training, tax their nervous system? They're going injecting growth hormone at home. Why aren't you injecting cerebrolysin? That's nerve growth factor.
That's the category that I'm following in, because I trained the failure for 20 years straight. And I honestly think I have some neurological damage from that as well, because I keep mixing up words. It's very obvious in my YouTube videos.
No, it's not obvious.
I edit most of it out, but but I think I think it's a training to failure that caused something impairment, and I would like to fix that with not training to failure anymore, and maybe use some cerebrolysin. And if there's if it takes a while to build up some sort of autoimmune response and you use it intermittently, 5 milliliters per week, I would definitely do that. It's basically a colostrum that works, right? An injectable colostrum that works.
What's colostrum?
It's at the growth factor from the beef. And you use it as a supplement, and then every 10 years it comes, colostrum, IGF-1. And then it comes out, and then 10 years later it comes back,
Oh, yeah. This thing works like a mother. It's really, really like you can't doubt it. You inject it the same day. You're like, oh, this is new. In fact, sometimes it's funny. You'll inject it in a place that'll cause a depot. So you won't feel it. You go to sleep, sometimes it won't hit you. And you inject it, and then that's why I realized not to inject big amounts in one place, because these depots happen, and then it hits you at the wrong time. So the next morning, this happened to me once. The next morning, I'm like, wow, this time nothing happened. I slept normal. I woke up 7 hours later. I go to work. I'm researching, reading a paper. Suddenly, I can't see the paper. I'm like, oh my God, what just happened to me? And it just hit me. It just released. I don't know how it released. I was just sitting and I couldn't see anything. I had to go sit down on the couch. I told my wife, I got to go lay down. So I went back to bed.
So would subcutaneous, like you space out your, let's say you have 5 milliliters, would like 5 subcutaneous injections of 1 milliliter would be the suitable protocol before bed?
That would be the ideal protocol. But what I've been doing personally is I've been splitting it between 2 or maximum 3 and injecting them in a low body fat place close to my head area, because I know there's a localized effect. Mm-hmm. So I don't want my glutes to become nervously strong. So what I would do is inject in a muscle you're injured in, or inject closer to your head. So I inject here and here.
Because we talked about this protocol with the pycnotropic factor and BPC 157, TB 500, and growth hormone locally in an area we want to improve.
Yeah, I've injected BPC in all kinds of places. It's pretty crazy. It does have local effects, but it's very scary, the cancer potential effect. Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to mention, the other experiment I'm running right now, I've been taking low dose naltrexone therapy. So do you guys know about naltrexone?
It's an anti-inflammatory, right?
Yeah.
It is an anti-inflammatory actually, but it's an opioid receptor antagonist. So it's given to heroin addicts as well as alcoholics, interestingly, for the treatment of when they quit heroin, to inhibit their pleasure if they used heroin, as well as to slightly, hopefully, reduce their urges. So it does this for alcoholics too, because apparently when you block opiate receptors, you reduce the pleasure and the desire for alcohol, interestingly. Now, so the thing is, if you block the opiate I wanted to mention a couple of things. So throughout all my drug experimentation in my life, probably because I grew up with a mother who had chronic pain, I was always very careful about using opiates. So I experimented with every opiate except what's that one that kills people? Fentanyl. Every other one I've tried at least once, but only once. And that's intentional. I have discipline. I'm not a stupid guy. And I know these things are two things. Number one, that they can be crazy addictive. They cause dependency. But number two, another thing, and this is the real reason that scared me, was that I saw my mother dealing with chronic pain all the time. And I thought, I just thought this intuitively. I didn't know if I was wrong. I thought that if I use opiates, maybe I'll desensitize myself to them. And one day I'll have real pain and I won't be able to treat it. I didn't know if this is true or not. Recently, I did a bunch of research and I found out actually that is true. And opiate receptors downregulate when you agonize them. And over time, opiate users, not all of them, but the majority, have to escalate the dose they use to treat the pain, real chronic pain. They have to escalate it over time. That's why kidneys become an issue over time, is that it does do that. So it does that. And not only that, but blocking them, both partially and fully, upregulates them not only acutely, but chronically, such that now there is a kind of treatment called low-dose naltrexone therapy. So full dose is 50 milligrams, 25 milligrams, it blocks all the opiate receptors. 4.5 milligrams blocks them for it has a shorter half-life in the body. It blocks them for a shorter time period and less aggressively. When it does this, it causes an upregulation of opioid receptors chronically to the point where it actually downregulates sensations of pain. So people who have actual chronic pain can take low-dose naltrexone therapy when it's not too bad, their chronic pain, where they need extreme opiates. They can take the low-dose opiate antagonist and reduce the pain. The real reason I'm taking it is because not only does it do that, but it improves, not just reduces, improves the function of the immune system, improves the immune system's ability to fight viruses and bacteria, but also reduces autoimmune activities. So it improves the function of the immune system, and it has an anti-cancer element because of that. So it may kill cancer tumors.
But naltrexone falls into the category of non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, or did I misresearch that? No, it didn't.
No, it's a opioid receptor ligand for the mu, kappa, and delta opioid receptor.
So it's different class. Antagonist. Okay.
Yeah, but it is an anti-inflammatory because of this reason. I was surprised you knew that. Yeah, this is recent research.
No, I started reading up about it. When we go over the clip things that we want to discuss. So I did read up on it. I was wondering if it could be used as a method to go through chronic injuries, like you mentioned, because a lot of the bodybuilders, they of course, they would result to, what is it called, the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug that a lot of people take, and then lead to kidney issues like ibuprofen, right? So a lot of people result to ibuprofen, and we all stay away from that as much as we can because we don't want this cascade into kidney issues. So maybe this naltrexone could be a suitable replacement for the people who are in chronic pain because their training intensity is so high. That's what I was wondering.
Maybe if they combined it with free radical scavengers and an immunomodulator like EPA, high-dose EPA, or if they take another immunomodulator like an actual pharmacologic TNF alpha blocker or something like that. But I mean, it's not that powerful, the low-dose naltrexone therapy. I've taken it. I mean, I don't have pain, so I can't really tell. But my thing is, it's an insurance policy because at some point I'm going to have chronic pain. So why don't I make sure these receptors are as upregulated as possible? Because I'll tell you, my policy before served me well. When I got the Crohn's disease, it was crippling pain for 8 months. I mean, I couldn't sit down physically. So I couldn't sit at all, and I sometimes couldn't stand. So it was like really messed up, and it was crippling pain. But because I had no tolerance, I could sometimes take 2.5 milligrams of oxycodone or 5 milligrams, and that would be way more than enough. And I didn't have to take it every day. So, that's my intention also. Anyway, I think we covered most of the topics, guys.
Yeah, I think we got through everything.
So. Yeah, I'm shocked. That was a long
one last thing I want to mention, just for people, whoever stayed with us till the end. I just wanted to mention that on my channel, we're trying to hire research assistants from the subscribers of the channel, people who are fans of the channel. And I just want to let people know, if you're interested, to go to our subreddit, The Long Lived. And there's a gentleman there, the moderator, called Morning Iron. He'll interview you.
There? Okay.
Yeah, Morning Iron's an awesome guy. He's probably reached out to you.
Sure. Yeah.
He's been there from the beginning. So he'll interview you guys. And, the idea is that I'm trying to hire research assistants so that we can do research streams on like different neurotransmitter systems and stuff like that. So we could build up sort of like almost like courses in the channel. And basically I do all my research myself. So I have limited time. So what I would do in exchange is I would teach them, most of them I would assume would be undergraduates or something like that. I would teach them what I learned from grad school to research. I was a researcher formerly, full-time researcher at the LSE. I managed the LSE's behavioral research laboratory. and I was taught to research from Carnegie Mellon and the LSE. So I could teach them some things. And also, if they ever want to open a channel themselves, I would be glad to help them in the development of the channel, and also to help them in any other kind of way I can. And also, the best ones, we will, as the channel grows, we will start to pay them. It can become a full-time job, and so on.
For anybody who's on, whose channel's posting this one, yours or Steve's?
I think mine.
I think Steve's actually, but yeah.
Steve's mine. Yeah,
okay,
we'll
so
get no views, but you'll get the views, Derek.
Whoever has made it to the end of the full podcast, comment pig brains for the algorithm, and everyone will, only people who made it this far will know why you're saying it, and it'll increase engagement, and then everyone will dig through the thing and try and figure out why it's in there. So it'll help everyone.
Right. And no timestamps. Don't put a timestamps with the pig brain. Otherwise people will be spoiled.
Exactly.
Guys, this was awesome. 3 hours.